skill.
Get yourself an electric banjo. You'll be fine.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So what did people think about Peter Green?
How old was Peter Green? I didn't.
I think
I'm not.
BBC website said he was 73.
We just film it.
Listen.
Stream
Yeah,
address,
I'm on there
Leo?
now. Why? Yeah, it's working.
Leo, stream address, please.
I just realized my mic's recording from the wrong spot on Audacity. That's not useful.
Yeah, that happens. You'll probably have to close out both Audacity and Mumble and then reopen.
Cool. Let's see how that works out.
Stream address, please, Leo.
I'll put it. Where do you want it?
Well, how are we supposed to listen to it if we don't know what
I'm
it
on the
is?
stream. I'll put it in the. I'll put it in Mumble for him.
What? What?
It's
Hello?
in Telegram right now.
There you go, Moss.
Hold on.
That's
There you go, Moss.
well, it's not so I can have it. It's so that the guys in the Hex chat room can have it. I'm just providing a public service. And there we go.
Okay. We're being very efficient today.
Well, I don't know. My brain doesn't feel like it's working on all cylinders, but I'm getting things done in the right order.
I'm almost ready for another nap.
I hear that.
Yeah, I just woke up about a little after 1 my time.
I've got my reclining computer chair. I'll just have a lie back.
Jason, we didn't ask what area you're in.
He's not here at the moment, I don't think.
Oh.
I turned off Mumble and Audacity so that
Here
way.
he comes.
Here he
He's
is.
back.
Yeah, I just realized my my setup for Audacity is using ALSA, which is preventing it from using the same microphone. I just route it through Pulsa, which is going to be a second.
Where do you live, Jason?
I am based just outside of the Atlanta area.
Oh, nice. Me too. I am in Lawrenceville.
Oh, okay. I'm west of you. I live and work west of you, but in different distances. I live in Marietta, northern Marietta, closer to Woodstock.
Yep.
And I work over in Alpharetta. So
I work in Alpharetta as well.
Oh yeah.
Well, when I used to go to an office, that is.
Yeah, I'm in there probably once or twice a week.
Yeah, cool.
You should get lunch or something, you know.
Yeah, I mean, again, when that's a normal thing to do, again.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, small world. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, all those Brits who suddenly decided to go on holiday in Spain and are still out there, when they get back, are going to have to isolate for 2 weeks because we've just put Spain back on the banned list.
Well, someone's echoing, and I don't think it's me.
Not me. I've got my headphones on.
I
got my headphones on. I do as well. Let me
Ditto.
But it might be me just because I'm trying to route things through also to make it play nice. Because right now it looks like if I'm running Pulse into Audacity, then it is catching everybody's audio, not just mine.
So are we having Bo today or Josh?
Don't look like it.
Bo said he couldn't make it. I assume Josh can't either.
and I
Josh
will
is
edit.
still doing these conference calls on a Sunday night at the moment.
Mhm.
I did say he could come and dive in after he finishes, but I'm not sure he's quite happy with that.
Yeah, I'm humming to test the difference between seeing your audio and versus my audio in Audacity, just to see what I can.
You don't need a reason, Jason.
just random mumbling. Yeah,
It's all good. We do random stranger things here. You're fine.
At least I think we're going to be okay. Might have a little bit of background
working
noise.
fine.
Yay.
Huzzah!
Someone
All right.
has spent time in the SCA, it sounds.
Oh, I just like using terms that are fun. Actually, what I'll do is here, I'm going to run a quick record test here and see if there's a difference between me talking and you guys talking and play it back for myself.
So everyone stops talking.
I know, right?
Perfect. That was actually just enough. Let's see what this does.
Want to test? No can do.
What was that, Leo?
I said, you want to test? No can do.
Perfect. I think I just listened to audio of me laughing to myself because I can't hear anybody else, which is great.
Yeah. Yep, your Audacity stream should be just you.
Perfect. I think we're in a happy place now.
Ah,
Right, Jason. When we start, I'll count us in and do 3, 2, 1, record, and then we record 25 seconds of silence with your mic open. And then once we've done that, we'll do the line up 3, 2, 1, 0.
with everyone saying 0 simultaneously, we hope.
So yeah,
And
then
that's
we
where
use
we
the
sync
3,
the...
2, 1, 0 to sync the tracks.
Sounds good to me. Of course, I should probably hit my mute button before I actually answer, so I can be heard.
No.
No.
You need to leave your microphone open anyway.
Oh, then
during
I'm just
the-
talking. Yeah, I'm just talking about right now. I was not. I was responding
right.
with myself on mute, which wasn't going to help at all.
No.
Hey, Leo, did you hear my high-tech solution to the headphone issue?
Oh, please tell me you're still using the Yeti for headphones.
No.
Aw.
I have a very low-tech solution. We got new battery for one of our UPSs, and the box is just the perfect size to put under my desktop to get it off the floor far enough that my headphones reach.
Nice. The best solutions are the simple ones, man.
That's thinking outside of the box.
Yeah.
Thinking above the box.
Thinking on
There you
top
go.
of the box.
I put a couple of things in. Check this out. I don't know whether anyone noticed.
Well, I'm scrolling down. Hello.
Scrolling.
Scrolling. Keep those mousies scrolling.
Anyone interested in an old 8-bit emulator kit?
Oh, Joe, I might be interested in your
I might
dock
need
if
you to
it fits a
elaborate on that,
T430.
Sorry, Moss.
That's all right. We do that all the time.
T430. No.
No?
Oh, you mean the
You got all
ThinkPad
the
docks?
Yeah, the ThinkPad dock.
They fit anything with a USB 3.0. Although I do have one. And the ones that are USB 3.0 are actually arriving late, so I don't know when they're going to get here. Or I haven't seen any movement on them in like 3 or 4 days. But I do have one that is one of the one-link adapters, but I don't know which models of ThinkPad that works with, and I do have that one in hand.
Okay.
Do you have a one-link adapter on your T430?
I don't know what that is. We have the connector that's under the machine. That's
No,
where the docks
it's not that
hook up
style of
to.
dock.
Not that type of dock. Okay. So what's up, Doc?
This is more of a port replicator.
Ah, okay. Sort of like my toaster.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, well, I was looking at the T430 docks and on eBay, and they seem to have, you know, anywhere from $11 plus $11 shipping to $40-50. And fun thing is that some
do
of
you
them
have, like-
say T430 in the header, and they don't say T430 in the text.
Yeah. Yep. Do you have a weird, narrow but long connector or port on the side of your computer that you have no clue about?
No, we've got that underneath the machine.
Uh,
You have to sit this on a dock plate.
so no, won't work.
Okay, I just thought.
Monster, you've been talking about getting a dock for your T430?
Well, I've been thinking about suggesting to my wife that she get a dock for her T430.
Got it. Well, I've got the one. I just got the one for the T450, and it is awesome. Except for something that I'll talk about in the show. Actually, I totally forgot about it. So thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, here's one $20 or best offer plus $29.61 shipping.
Yeah, my dock
Yeah.
was like $25, and it came with an extra 65-watt power cable. And I was like, you know what? If I get this dock and it doesn't work, that's fine because that adapter is worth $25 to me. So sweet.
Yeah, do the real docks need a extra power supply? That's what was confusing me about what Joe was saying.
They just need a power supply. So the same thing that you would use for your laptop, you just plug it into the dock instead.
Okay, Joe.
Yes.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Hold on, let me show you what I'm talking about.
Now that mine might show up in pounds because I am VPN'd into Manchester, as is my wont on show day.
This
About ready?
ThinkPad one-link dock.
Okay, let me click on that and see what I get. ThinkPad one link dock. Oh, yeah, that is different. Where would that connect? You'd have to have that connector
Special
on it.
connector on the device. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now this is the one that I picked up 10 of here.
Y'all ready to get the show on the road?
There's a show?
Oh, it's after 3? Well, how
Is
did
that-
that happen?
Well, I guess not really. All I got to do is just be like, welcome to mintCast, and then we just keep talking about the same stuff.
Yeah, well, you
Shall
know.
we do the audio then?
Yeah,
Yep,
let's get
started on audio.
Audio schmaudio.
no AC power adapter. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah,
close
it's
all these
difficult
things.
to find them with power adapters.
340
Everyone
show
ready
notes.
to start Audacity?
Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
ready.
Wait. There's someone saying there's echo in the live stream. Hang on.
All right, okay.
Echo in the live stream. Echo in the feed.
Well, good night, everybody.
Can follow that. See you in 2 weeks.
Have you tested out your new mic with your guitar?
Well, it probably
I
won't
think it was
work with
just
my
open
guitar
mic.
because, it being sort of unidirectional type stuff, I'm thinking I'm going to have to use the Yeti when I'm doing any music recording.
Yeah, it's just.
I don't know. I could grab the
uh,
guitar and try it, but I thought we were starting the show.
I think it's just feedback from someone's open mic, so we should be good.
Okay.
Yeah, I am hearing the echo now.
Yeah, I am.
Ah, it just went click and stopped.
Oh, that might be me then.
Oh,
Ah.
Yeah,
Alright.
You
Yep.
have a headset.
I have a headset, which is
Y-
unique.
What you're suffering from is mic bleed.
That would explain it.
Are you using a Kraken?
I am not.
Okay,
far as
because
I know-
those
as
are
far as I know.
notorious. Those
your
are
mic's bleeding,
notorious
but
for mic
my ears
bleed.
are bleeding.
Yeah, this is an ancient Plantronics one. So
What is your green bar hitting at on Audacity when you click monitor?
1,000.
when I speak, it'll go up to it's checking between -6 and -12. And
That's
when
where
I'm
it
not
should be.
speaking, just under -54. Sometimes it bounces up to -48.
Yeah, that's about
That
average.
should be where it is.
mean,
Yeah,
the-
mine's a little higher than that.
The
Maybe I
easy
should
low
turn
tech
mine down.
fix. The easy low tech fix is just to turn us down a little bit in your ears.
I can do that.
Yeah. Or
Just in
To
case I
adj-
yell at you, right?
adjust your basement or your floor in Mumble.
Oh, true that.
That would be another way. Let's see. I lowered.
Okay, I
My
turned
volume.
mine down a little. Maybe I turned it down too far.
Hey.
There. Yeah, that's
Moss, are you-
better.
No, you're
Are you on
fine.
the new mic, Moss?
Yes.
Yeah,
You sound silky. I like it.
he does, doesn't he?
Hey.
You're
He's
right.
good.
You're not getting
Okay.
all the background noise from him either.
To be seen. To be seen.
Let's see.
We haven't done the
Audio
edit yet.
floor.
I haven't heard a single vehicle.
I heard one.
There haven't been that many, but
So
anyhow,
on the,
why don't we get started?
Sorry, Jason, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was saying over here in Mumble, I've got a compression audio processing. You were saying adjusting the floor. I'm not seeing something specifically labeled.
Yeah,
that.
hold on. Let me
Audio
switch
input
over.
under
Yeah.
transmission. You can do the silence below. You want to bring that up a little bit?
I have it. Actually, that's why I have it on. I have it on continuous, but I've been turning it on and off based on my mute button on my headset.
Switch it to voice activity and then just use the mute button on your headset.
I can do that.
It'll actually improve the overall quality of the stream.
Sweet. All right. And so, all right. So we're keeping this at voice hold at, and so silence below. What value are we looking at here?
What you want with the silence below is while you're talking, you don't want it to fall into the red. So bring it
Fair
up.
enough.
And then speech above, you want it to, like, if you just take a deep breath, you don't want it to go into the green yet.
Okay.
So
Fine.
soliloquize for a minute.
So soliloquizing for a minute. Yay. Yeah, I'm in the green when I'm talking. And when I'm not talking, we'll see if this plays nice. How's it? Does anyone know how the echo is sounding right at this
Yeah,
point?
I usually set
Not hearing an
voice
echo now.
hold for about a second as well, just so that you don't get clipped.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any echo now.
All right.
Well, there I heard a teeny bit, but it's
Yeah, but
better.
it's mostly cleared up, so we're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take it.
Okay. Shall we go then?
Let's
Yeah, we're
go.
only 10 minutes late.
We're never
Nine.
It's
late.
early.
Technically, we started the show at 1:50, right? I mean, because the banter, right? That's free.
Everyone ready to press record when I say 3, 2, 1, record, yeah?
Seems like it.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, record. Not a murmur of traffic from Moss at all.
There hasn't been much, but
Were we doing the silence right after that too? Am I forgetting
Yeah.
something? I mean, it's fine because my silence came out right, but
Yeah, no, we were doing
yeah,
the silence.
that's what we were doing.
well, good thing I didn't screw that up.
Sync time.
Sync time. Okay, so I'll do the 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then on 0, everyone says 0. 3, 2, 1, 0.
Zero. Wow, we were spot on with that.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
like it.
Okay,
Okay.
over to you, Leo. Oh, by the way, we are recording Mumble. I started it even before Leo got here.
So you're telling me we have all the good bits so we can make
Yeah.
some intros and outros, huh?
Oh, yes.
Love it.
Beep, 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 beep.
All right. Y'all are ready. Mute 'em up.
Head 'em up, move 'em out.
Moss, you're still open. Oh, I guess it is because I heard a click. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 340. This is episode 340.5. Livestream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. We're in the mintcast channel at irc.spotchat.org. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, Facebook, or post directly at mintcast.org. I forgot the music. Pretend that you hear music. This is Leo, and with me today is Joe,
Hello, hello.
Tony Hughes,
Hi, guys.
Moss,
Yes, indeed.
Tony Watts,
Hey.
and special guest Jason Van Gumster.
Aw, I'm special.
Yeah! We're recording on Sunday, July 26th, 2020. First up in our wanderings, Jason prints a masterpiece. I get knee-deep in mint. Tony Hughes becomes a journalist. Moss has new toys. Joe springs a leak. And Tony Watts is rocking in the free world. Then in our news, Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix changes course. Android comes to a real phone. Blender needs blenders, and more. In security, we talk a little bit about Twitter. In our innards section, we become Blender experts with Jason Van Gumster's help. And finally, the feedback and a few suggestions. Well, Jason, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm having a blast already.
Already, yeah, we spent a lot of time playing with audio, getting everything right, and I think we got it right. Everything's good now. So, Jason, this is the point in the show where we typically ask you to tell us everything you've been doing for the past couple of weeks. So, tell us everything you've been doing for the past couple of weeks.
Bunch of things, but I'll be less vague. It's the most fun I've had recently is I took an old 3D sculpt that I did in Blender. Yeah, sorry. I took an old 3D sculpt that I did in Blender, and I printed it before at a smaller scale, and I basically tried to see if I could max out the size on my print bed just to see how big I could print it. And it's not exactly life size. It's kind of just over average shrunken head size, but I had a lot of fun with that. I also got to play with the gyroid fill pattern, which is, I have to say, one of the most pleasant fill patterns to actually just sit down and watch being printed. I don't know if any of you have ever printed with the gyroid, but it is. This also has a pretty cool history from what they were telling, what I've read about it when I started sharing photos of it with folks.
I want to hear about this gyroid, but hang on.
No.
You said something that average shrunken head size. What is that? What is the average shrunken head size?
I'm imagining it's about the size of a normal person's fist, but
Okay,
that's what I'm
Yes, that
imagining.
is correct.
that's a good visual. I think I can handle that.
Well, I mean, and it is a bust, right? It is a sculpture of a character, and so he.
What character?
He's a character that I designed this character for a story that I've been writing. I haven't actually released yet, but yeah, it's a pretty gruesome sort of impish looking guy with one of his eyes is actually sewed shut, and his mouth and eyes has a steel plate bolted over it. So not overly pleasant to look at, not sort of something that you'd want to maybe give to a child on their birthday. But
No, I know what you mean about watching the infill, because when it works right, I love watching the hex print, but I haven't tried the gyroid.
one of the things I actually found out about the gyroid is that it actually causes less shaking. So my 3D printer is actually on a cart with wheels. And whenever I've done like a hex fill or a zigzag or any of those sort of things, the servos tend to jerk and stop, and the whole thing tends to shake a little bit more because the gyroid has that nice, very sort of pleasant curviness going on. It's a lot less herky jerky.
Okay, so you don't have to mess around with the jerk control settings.
Right. It actually plays with that fairly well, and it was originally designed for like. I have to look up the article again, but it was originally designed for displaying like getting a very, very strong strength for graphene, and the 3D printing community says, well, we'll just use that as an infill. Thanks for the research, guys.
Yeah.
And that's just the first bullet point.
We got plenty of time.
Perfect. The other thing, I've actually been doing a lot of stuff on the analog side. So one of the things I do is I tend to make things out of wood. Sometimes it's jewelry, sometimes it's carving. And in this case, recently I got gifted some large chunks of cherry and walnut, and I've been sitting in the back and digging at them with knives and saws and Dremel tools and whatever other tools I can do to try to bend this wood to my will. And so I've been having a lot of fun with that. Sometimes it's nice not to deal with too much technology. I mean, power tools count, but a lot of the times I've been doing this with just straight up knives, and the only technology I have is a podcast running in my ears. Then the other thing that's related to the carving and 3D printing is that it's carving and 3D printing and Blender. I guess late last year I designed a mount for carving on some of these wooden rings that I work. So engravers and jewelry makers, they tend to have a mount that it rotates around and it moves around. It's a very solid piece of steel and precision construction, which is way more than I need and also way more expensive than I have. And so I designed something that would work for me for when I carve these designs into rings and into wooden rings and horn rings too, which are also kind of interesting and fun. And but some folks had asked some more details about actually the process of making that and those sort of things. So I actually did an episode on my podcast, shameless plug, the Open Source Creative Podcast, where I talk about how I put it together, some of the pitfalls I ran into while doing it, and a little bit about actually using it and some things I want to do to try and actually improve it. And it's also all the files for it I put up on Thingiverse. So if anybody else wants to print it or improve it for me, totally down for that.
This may be the final push I need to go buy some like 3D printing stuff. That episode looks good. I've been planning on listening to it and watching the video. So yeah, man, I'm really looking
Micro
forward to this.
Center right now has the Ender 3 Pro for $200.
And that's the machine I've been
really
working
good
with.
Price.
It's
Start
great
a
price.
hobby that costs more than Magic the Gathering.
Oh man, I know, right?
The upside, though, is that you get to make things to make things, which is really kind of cool. I've been using it for this sort of thing for a while. Just if I need a particular sort of tool or I need something to do with it. It used to be, well, has somebody already made this and where can I go buy it? But now it's like, well, I have an idea how it should work. What if I just try to design it myself? and it's been that's been sort of fun distractions from what I should actually probably be doing, but fun nonetheless.
Yeah, I think I'm looking for practical stuff, clips here or just things that would make my life a little bit easier that would probably only cost $4 or something like that. But I mean, the fact that you made it yourself, there's just an extra little bit of pride involved in that.
Well, generally, you can get it faster than Amazon can deliver it to you if you can print it.
That's also true. Yeah, exactly.
It's true, and it's also for things that are like application specific. Like I have a on my kitchen sink, I don't really have a place to put a sponge, right? There's not really and all the sponge, because I have the way my sink is shaped and the way that it works, there's not really a place to like do like the suction cup sponges and stuff like that. Suction cup holders and stuff don't actually work very well. So I wanted something that would hang on the neck of the faucet, and so I actually designed a sponge holder that would go around and clasp and hold our sponges and drain nicely and have some sort of weird sort of Jason-esque artistic aesthetic to it. So yeah, little things like that are you start finding things like, oh, I can make a thing for that, and it's actually becomes really fun and allows you to make your space your own, I think.
That's pretty big. That's awesome.
So that's enough. That's proselytizing on 3D printing. You should do it. It's fun. Then the other fun thing, I guess, it is kind of podcast related, is I got a cool audio interface for recording. It's a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, which is really great, except I realized that my handy little Rode Smart Lav that I typically have been recording on, it won't actually connect to it without a series of adapters, and I really don't want to go through those. So I guess I'm gonna have to get myself a new mic at some point.
I just posted one of those in our Discord channel. Somebody's got one on sale near me.
Yeah, I've got the Solo sitting here, and it's been really fantastic. But in Linux, it can be a little funky if you're using pretty much all of the Solo. For some reason, I think you guys might remember where it just like drops me down a few octaves for no apparent reason. So yeah, that's the only issue I've run into it. Other than that, it's been fantastic.
Sweet. Well, I'm looking forward to playing with it once I get a mic that I can actually plug into it. I guess, and the other thing is I've been playing a lot with I do a lot on the creative and art, but I also tend to dabble on web technology things. So I've been when you deal with like Blender and GIMP and these sorts of things, you start automating processes in Python. You start automating things in Python. You start digging into other things Python can do, which gets you towards a little bit of web development. So I started playing around with Flask and SQL Alchemy, which is like, have you ever played with pulling data from databases the old way, where you actually had to like send SQL statements to your database via, and then whichever, if you're running MariaDB or MySQL or Oracle or Postgres, you have completely different syntax. And so SQL Alchemy sort of makes that all Pythonic and much less SQL-y or random based on whatever that engine is. So that's been fun to play with. And I've been also playing with self-hosting my own analytics on the various websites that I run, because I was de-Googlifying them as best as I could. And the analytics part was a big part of it. And I stumbled across Goat Counter, which I totally was down for just because it's called Goat Counter.
Yeah, the name got me.
The name totally wins it. And I mean, the interface is a little bit ugly, but it's written in Go, it's super fast, and you can self-host it. And it also, because of the way that it handles analytics, it actually doesn't store any sort of session cookies. So there's not really much of an issue with GDPR as far as I can tell. Granted, I'm not a GDPR expert, but there's that. So at the very least, none of my sites, as far as I can understand it, have to have a little nag notice that, hey, look, you're being tracked, because you're not really being tracked. It's just you're being counted for once. And then further on in the self-hosting thing, I do have mailing lists and stuff like that. And I didn't want to mail. I mean, people are, if you have a mailing list, people are sharing an email address with you. And for me, that's one of those things where you don't necessarily want to use like a software as a service thing, because then the people who are trusting you are trusting whoever you're trusting. Whew, that's a chain of trust. To handle their emails with respect. And so I've been looking at self-hosting that because I get paranoid about it. And PHP List is actually something you can self-host and fun. So I've been digging with all of that. And because I've been digging within all of that, the whole web infrastructure of how SSL works and validating emails through DNS, and holy mackerel, that's a mess. Trying to navigate that if you're just trying to figure out how to do it over the weekend, you've never done it before, not a fun task. But I learned a lot, so there's that. And then I migrated all the websites that I do. I had a mixture of stuff that I had handwritten, stuff that was running in WordPress, and stuff that was done with static site generation. And I finally just migrated them all. Actually, I did also have one in Ghost, which is a Node.js based one. But I finally migrated them all over to Hugo, which I'm finding a lot more pleasant to work with. So
I need to find out about that.
Hugo's fun. It is written in Go, but unlike a lot of the other ones, you don't necessarily have to know a lot about the underlying language to really take advantage of it. The only time you really have to know Go related things is the way that Go handles its templating for web pages, which you're going to have to do that for any sort of framework sort of setup. So it uses Go templating, but once you understand that syntax, it's actually really, really nice. You build your site, you sort of use one of the themes you want, or you can branch off and make your own theme off of it, and a lot of it becomes fill in the blanks. And then now you're just your site maintenance consists of doing a Hugo new with whatever bit of content you want to throw in there, then run it to generate it, and then you rsync it up to your web host, and you're done, which is great.
That's pretty awesome.
I've
That
been
reminds me
fighting
of
with
Jekyll.
WordPress for a while. Yeah, just WordPress doesn't like me.
And that's I've been writing in Markdown for so long now, and Hugo speaks it natively. And yeah, Jekyll is in the same class as Jekyll. I think it runs a little bit faster. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that. So them's my things.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Man, I already feel like I'm learning a little bit. You've already convinced me that I need to invest in a 3D printer. So, I mean,
Do it. Do it.
I think I will. I need to go shopping.
Leo wants to find out what his shrunken head looks like.
Honestly, that might be the first project, right? Let's see if I can't shrink my head 3D printing wise. Well, for me, a few things. I got a video capture card that is not one of those crazy expensive Elgato crazy. They're like $400 or $300 or something like that. So I thought, you know what? Can I get this done with just something that I found on Amazon? And I think it's gonna be okay. It's some no-name brand. I can't even remember what it's called. I'll dig up a link and add it to the show notes later. But it was $60. It does 1080p at 60 frames per second. That's good enough. I plugged it up to a Raspberry Pi. I've only done it to the Raspberry Pi so far. It's the only device that I've hooked up to it. And when you boot up, you realize that the Raspberry Pi does this thing where it's like, hey, I know you got a 1080p screen, but let's just not do that. So you have to disable overscan or enable overscan. I can't remember, but I plan on writing up, my journey with it all. And that was just something.
That's one of those HDMI little capture things that allows you to take the output and have it back as input.
Yep, and it's got a pass-through as well, so I can hook it up to the Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi can give it to the HDMI capture card via USB. It feeds it to another computer that sees it as a webcam, and then so you can do it in OBS or anything.
I was going to say,
really.
Something interesting that you can do is you can take a DSLR, a high-quality camera, and use it as a webcam.
Yes. So this was the other half of the whole reason that I wanted to get this capture card. That's the other half of this. My wife has a Canon EOS 7D, 7 in the letter D, not 7D, like 70. And that was one of the things that I was like, okay, well, how am I going to be able to do this? So I need to go buy a constant battery pack power source AC adapter thingamajig for it as well. Because the batteries only last like 45 minutes if you're just doing straight video. So that kind of gets annoying. And I think there might even be a size limitation on the card as well. So yeah, this HDMI pass-through is going to be exactly what I need for that. But so I plan on adding some videos about this. But here's the thing. Here's my question to y'all. what do I do? I think like all the beginning, here's how you install something on a Raspberry Pi. Those have been done to death. But what could I do as far as videos go? You know, just showing, helping out. This is how you do this or that or something like that. Because I plan on putting stuff on Terminal Tricks, my YouTube channel, just to I don't know, just to put some content out there.
It's difficult to find new things that other people haven't done already or done to death, especially with like the Raspberry Pi. So,
So I just redo it, but with my own
yeah,
flair, huh?
exactly.
I think I can handle that. So definitely, that's something that I want to do, just for fun, just for fun. I did put out another video the other day. We've got it linked later on in the show notes, but it's getting Chromium back if you don't want Snap. So that's interesting as well. So I've been really putting Linux Mint through its paces. The LM20. I had some complaints last time with sleeping or not waking up from sleep, or the screensaver would freeze or whatever. All that stuff has been handled. So I'm actually at a really good point in Linux Mint 20. Right when I installed it and started having those issues, it ran through my mind, should have just stayed on 19.3. But after a couple of updates, I'm at the point now where it's just like, yeah, this is comfortable. Overall, not really a whole lot has changed in Mint, to be honest. So yeah, it's comfortable again. I'm at a really good point in my Linux Mint journey at this point.
Yeah, I went through that when 20 first came out, before they had the upgrade stuff, and I ran it. I had Mint 19.3 on one partition and 20 on another, and I just felt like 19.3. But then when the upgrade came out, and I went through that, which was a lot more complex than most upgrades, and it finally worked. 20 is just 20, 20 is just Mint.
Yeah, it's like Mint with newer versions of things, and that's pretty much it. So I've really been enjoying my time on Mint, to be honest. As far as the upgrade goes, Moss, I meant to ask, like, that's just one thing that has just been freaking everybody out. If you go check out the forums of the IRC or whatever, during the upgrade, there can be this like 15 to 30 minute just like freeze. It's not frozen, because you can still move your mouse around. You can tell that X is still running in the background, but I mean, the desktop itself looks like it's frozen, and people are freaking out about this. And it just kind of, I mean, I read the release notes. Clem does note in there that is want to happen. So I read those panic posts, and I'm like, man, just take it easy. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. So that happened to you then, right, Moss?
I had a bigger mess than that when I did it on my desktop. That it seemed like, okay, I did everything right, and it didn't happen, and I didn't have any files that said at the end of the process I would have a whole lot of auto remove to do, and there was nothing. And I'm going, gee, this didn't even upgrade. And then I turned it on the next day, and I'm fiddling around, and I'm just watching TV and whatnot, and there's my upgrade icon on my machine crops up with a little number, and that looks different than I'm used to. And I looked at it, and hey, I do have 20, and I went and I had all the files to auto delete, so I did that. It just, that was the weirdest thing. But my other upgrades went smooth as silk. I didn't have any hangs or anything. It is a whole different upgrade process from what people are used to, though, because you're used to just having it happen through your upgrade manager.
So is that something that happened in from 18 to 19? I mean, it was all through the update manager?
I think so, and most of the Ubuntu upgrades are through the update manager.
Yeah, now that I do know. Interesting. Well, I think Owen...
Well, even 19.2 to 19.3, it was just upgrade manager.
Well, yeah, but those aren't upgrades. Those are just taking you to...
gone from 18 to 20, and it was through the update manager to go from 18 to 19, and then command line to go from 19 to 20.
Yeah, interesting. So that is a bit of a departure then from what it used to be. Interesting. Yeah, 'cause I don't think I tend to just shy away from upgrades, but and I think I mentioned this on the last show too. It's just old Windows habits die hard, man. You just never upgrade Windows, otherwise, issues ensue. But that's good to know. I was going to mention that Owen from Telegram had in what from last episode, 2 episodes ago, recently, had similar issues, and Dan helped him work all that stuff out. So yeah, the upgrade is I don't know, it can be a little hit or miss, I think, but an apt update -F or upgrade -F, something like that. They had to force the installation of some packages to make it work. Anyway, got a dock for my T450S. It's 98% awesome. The 2% is I was playing around with DroidCam, so every time I go onto like Biddle or something like that that requires a webcam, I'll use DroidCam with my Nexus 6P that is no longer getting security updates, so I don't really use it outside of just things like that. So I started using it, and it had been working fine for a long time. I got this dock, plugged everything back in, and I guess it was I think it was Biddle. Got on there, and it was random. Like every 5 to 15 minutes, the picture that's being fed into the fed from my phone would just freeze. If I stopped DroidCam, unplugged the phone from the USB, plugged it back in, and then started DroidCam, it just worked. It would just pick right back up where it left off. But that was annoying, and you'd have to do it every few minutes. So that was just it was really annoying. Anyway, so I think I was blaming DroidCam because they had just done an upgrade. Well, between the last time I used it and the time that I had used it most recently, they had run an upgrade on it, recompiled, reinstalled everything, and that started. It didn't dawn on me that it was the dock. But anyway, so I roll back, I delete all that junk, roll back to the previous version, and it still happens. So I'm like, okay, it's on my side. It's something going on here. So anyway, and the last thing that I would have ever thought to do was plug it into a USB port directly on the laptop instead of through the dock. Because the dock has a powered port, and this phone is a little old. The battery is a little old, so it will drain fairly quickly if you're not careful. So I'm like, yeah, definitely powered port. Well, anyway, long story short, use the powered port on the laptop because for some reason the USB powered port on the dock I don't know. It will just stop in the middle of droid camming for me. But I'm just glad it was an easy fix, and it's not over the top or anything like that.
This is not the DroidCam port you're looking for.
Exactly right. And I cannot believe that was the issue. Yeah, it's funny. So it could be that my dock is a little weird, but I don't have any other issues with it. So 98%, right?
How do you like DroidCam? I've been meaning to play with it, but I haven't.
It is surprisingly good if you don't mind compiling your own software. They don't have a binary anymore. So you just gotta, it's super duper easy. On Ubuntu, I think everything is already pre-installed for you. So all you really got to do is wget the package, verify it if you want to, extract it to temp, compile it, run it. And those are quite literally just like 3 separate commands, and they give them to you. You just copy and paste them in. But as far as quality goes, it's pretty fantastic. The downside is that it starts you out at like 640 by 480. So you got to tinker with the module that you compiled to make it run at the resolution that you want it to run at. And it's got its quirks, obviously. But if you don't have a webcam, and you're like in my situation, I do not have a webcam, and I still think that are webcams still crazy expensive right now?
They're not. If they're not crazy expensive, they're just hard to get.
Yeah.
I've been in the market one for a while. I'm still using one that's at this point maybe 12 years old. So,
oh wow! Well,
yeah.
that's a testament to the quality of the webcam, man.
It does 720p. I'm not going to complain about it, but my phone does better. So something like
Right.
DroidCam might work out.
Yeah,
Now,
you can get
exactly.
720p right now on Facebook Marketplace for around like $30-$35, which is pretty darn good. But the higher end ones, what is that one? The Logitech C920?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
a good one. And the 922 is even better.
Yeah, you're looking at around $120, at least around here.
Yeah, it's a little more than I want to pay, but
Exactly.
that's all right because you can get the 922 for $99. I think that's once it normalizes, I'll probably end up doing that because it is a bit of a hassle to do CamDroid. Anytime you want to upgrade, you got to recompile. But overall, it's pretty easy.
What I remember with DroidCam in the little bit that I played with it, I think it'll give you 720p for free with the Android
Yep.
app, and if you want more than 720p, you can get that with I don't remember how much it is, but you can pay a little more to get their premium version of the app or whatever. But 720p is really pretty good, I think, for streaming.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just like joining a Zoom thing, there's no way that anybody's going to notice that you're not 720p just because you're in a little box. So whatever. So totally worth it if you got a phone and a USB cable. It's totally worth it.
Sweet, something to play with.
Definitely, yeah. Add it to the list, right? All right, I've been going on long enough, but I'll stop on this point. So I was mentioning Biddle, and I didn't go yesterday. And of course, the one time that I'm like, they're probably not going to talk about anything too terribly important that I need to be there for. They end up talking about what I do for a living. And I'm like, God, I have so much to say. And I wasn't there. So, yeah, fun times. Anyway, outside of that mishap, Tony Hughes, what have you been up to?
This and that.
Sounds about right.
I don't know if anyone remembers, but earlier, I think it was towards the end of last year or the beginning of this year that Ronnie put out a call for writers for Full Circle magazine, which is a magazine for the Linux community around the Ubuntu spins and any version, any Linux that's based on Ubuntu. And so I decided to write a little series on podcast production in Linux. And Ronnie contacted me a couple of weeks ago and said, how are you getting on with the rest of the series? Because the first one's due to go into this month's magazine. I just want to check how you're doing. Well, I'd already sent him episode 2, the second in the series, and I had 3 on my computer ready to wing off to him. So I've now got to write episode 4. But yeah, so if you check out Full Circle magazine this month, it should be out in the next few days. You might find me in there, or you should find me in there.
We are all infiltrating Full Circle magazine.
I've done a couple of articles. I did an article that appeared, one of the My Linux Journey. I did that, and that was published in 2010. And I was a real noob in those days. And then I did one a little while later, and I think it was on, if I remember correctly, it was one of the multi-boot programs that you could install different distros onto one stick and use it to carry around, which we now know that Ventoya's kind of superseded. But yeah, so go and check that out. I've also been doing some of my Matchbox, and I did a little group restoration of a little group of 5 Lamborghini Marzel models this week, and was quite pleased with the results. And I started another bulk restoration today of some another group of Matchbox. I'm just trying to think what it is now. I can't think what the name of the model is. But yeah, so keeping up with me modelling. Myself and Moss recorded episode 15 of Distro Hoppers, and the show went out on Friday. And public apology to Moss, because his audio edit didn't come out quite as good as it could have done. I freely admit I'm not as a professional sound engineer and don't always get it completely right on the edits, but
it'll be easier next time.
Yeah,
no, you're not supposed to admit that, Tony. You're supposed to say something like, "Yeah, the bits on the hard drive got mixed up" or something like that. I have no idea what happened.
Is that what you're supposed to say?
Yeah, of course, right?
Not that we're human and we get things wrong occasionally.
Not you.
No, Moss sounded really funky, and it's all his fault.
Yeah. Anyway, the show went out, and we'll see what the listeners think of it. And on Friday, because we just recorded and put out that show, I did a fresh install of Mint 20 Mate on the Distro Hopper's laptop, with the intention of that being my review for September. The next show won't be until September, because at the end of August I'm going away for a couple of weeks, and Studio B's bandwidth won't be good enough to do the record and edit and all the upload and faffing around with archive.org and all that. So we're gonna have a little longer break than normal, but we'll be back in September. And that's about it for me this time. Moss, apart from Distro Hoppers, what have you been doing?
Well, I've been doing distro hoppers. I'm probably reviewing Ubuntu Unity for the episode 16 of Distro Hoppers. I've had a brief but fun conversation with its dev, Rudra Sarasvat. I also haven't decided what to burn to SD to run my Pi 4 on, and I'm waiting for Rudra to port UUR to the Pi, which he is working on, but I'm still considering Ubuntu Mate and Manjaro Raspberry Pi versions. We recorded episode 15 of Distro Hoppers on Wednesday, as Tony said, and we had a grand time doing it. It is available now. Episode 12 has gone over 400 downloads. This is our 8th episode to do so. 2 of them has gone over 500 downloads. So, wow, we're really taking off, sort of. I sold a laptop to one of our listeners. From the proceeds of that sale, I purchased a few things. A new microphone, which you should be hearing now. New SSDs for my laptop and desktop. A terabyte for the desktop and 512 gig for the laptop, which are installed and will give me more room to install even more distros. I still had half the money from the sale to put into savings against my unemployment period or continued savings should I get a job soon. Yes, I now have 200 distros on each of my computers. No, it's not that bad. I have 6 distro partitions on my laptop, one of which is unused at present, and 8 on my desktop, 5 of which are unused. I didn't have that much time to play around with that stuff. I did things the easy way on my desktop, cloning the old drive to the new one and then adding partitions, and the hard way on the laptop, as Clonezilla refused to load on my laptop no matter which USB stick I used. I don't know what happened there, but it just wouldn't see that as a boot stick. So I completely partitioned the disk using gparthead, and I did 5 installations in one night. Thanks to USB 3.1 and the magic of SSDs, I did all of that in 5.25 hours, bringing each distro to a complete install and upgrade with a few programs removed and a couple of things added, about 85%. Since then, I have Mint, Bodhi, and Ubuntu Unity Edition up to about 98%. I got my printer installed last night, but I'm still needing to configure some programs and tweak 1 or 2 things. OpenMandriva and Gecko are still pretty much in the 85 to 90% range of completion due to lack of time, and will probably never get to 100% because there are some things I use that I can't find for those. So I talked with Rudra Sarasvat, as I already mentioned, the dev of the Ubuntu Unity Edition, Ubuntu Ed, and a couple of other new distros, and found he didn't really have a good mirror, so I hooked him up with my old friend and listener Firecat, and now he does. Link in the show notes. Always good to make connections in the community.
He has so one of the new ones that you mentioned, he has what is it, Ubuntu Web? It's trying to compete with Chrome OS.
He started with Firefox OS and is developing it from there.
How do you have that much time?
He's a 10-year-old kid. He goes to school, he sleeps, he has meals with his family. I don't know how he does it either. This morning I was fending off accusations from someone that he wasn't being serious about it, that his forum was basically empty, and we're going, it's new.
I know,
Give
right?
the kid a break. Yeah. We get lots of stuff in the several groups that we have Ubuntu Unity. So there's plenty of talk. It's just no one's doing it in the forum yet. Yeah, he's a good person. He's fun to talk with. He's got his head on his shoulders. everyone says, well, how do you have time for this? He goes, well, I just finished that one and now I'm working on this one. And he just totally knows what he's doing.
Okay, so it's just like one project after another. You get it to a point where it's good, and then you start something else, and then I guess it's just maintenance at that point, right? Just slowly making things better.
Right. He still hasn't put together a team to help him, but there are people starting to volunteer for that. Okay, we actually did get 1 or 2 chapters of Dresden Files read since last show, and I guess that means it's time to talk to Joe.
Yep, there's actually a new Dresden Files book out. Peace Talks just came out. I enjoyed it, but it felt incomplete. And, it's been several years since the last book. It still felt like this book was very rushed, and there was just something missing from it. But this is likely because the book was split into 2, and the next book will be out in a couple of months. I kind of followed the story on what was going on there, and the book was supposed to be so large that it would have been very expensive for the production company to put it out that way. So they split it into 2 books, but Jim Butcher really, really wanted both books released in the same year. So both of them are coming out I think it's 77 days apart from the one to the other. So a couple of months, and I'll get the rest of the book. In the meantime, I've
There's a
started
really
reading...
nice video trailer out.
Yeah, and it is a good book. I mean, I went through it twice in right after it came out, just to make sure I picked up on all the details, and I'll probably go through it again before the next one comes out. And the next one, okay, this was Peace Talks, and the next one is Battlegrounds. In the meantime, I started reading the full Drist collection again by R.A. Salvatore, and that's about 36 books. I've attempted to read the whole collection before, and I usually make it about halfway through. But with the completion of the most recent series, I really want to give it another go, and I think I'm on book 7 or 8 right now, so it is good. My freezer out in the garage had an issue. I think one of my kids failed to close it properly, and it was full of ice, which then melted, along with, a couple $100 worth of food that was in there. And yeah, that sucks, but what's worse is the water that leaked out was absorbed by the box next to the refrigerator, which just so happened to be one of my double long boxes of comic books. I did post a picture of it on Telegram, and about half the comic books in there were ruined despite being bagged.
And I saw the picture on this.
Yeah.
Oh, it hurts so hard. It hurts so bad.
My Darkest Night, a bunch of the New 52, bunch of Wolverine, bunch of my Green Lanterns, some Hulks, some really obscure stuff that you can't get anymore. It broke my heart. I cried a little.
Yeah, sorry, dude. That's awful.
Yeah. And I know, I can get digital copies and read them, but it sucks when, something you collected for years just gets ruined like that. It's my own fault, really, for having them in a box that was set on the floor in my garage. My fault. Now, the rest of the boxes are up off the floor anyway, and I got a rubber bin for the comics that weren't damaged or were only or that I thought were savable, that weren't completely saturated. And I got some boat desiccant and a big rubber bin, and I put them in there, and I've been letting them dry out. And I bought a couple more long boxes that are plastic that I'm going to move them into once I've decided that they're, dry. My server, which, I've been talking about, I think since we first, started doing this show together, finally gave up the ghost after years of limping along. So I had to build a new one, And
But you can't just not have a server, right?
I need one. I need one. It's that simple. I do too much with it, and the wife agreed. So, you know, I was able to get spousal approval on the expense for it. But I got the Ryzen 5 3600. I would have preferred the 3600G, but that one isn't out yet. So it'll be out in a couple of months, and maybe I'll do a second build because it won't be that much just to get a mini ITX or a micro ATX and fix it. Oh, fix up another system. I did get the B450M micro ATX motherboard and a cube case, and I had an RX 560 graphics card sitting around, which should eventually get upgraded. They gave me the incorrect power supply at Micro Center, so I had to make do with another one that I had sitting around. I tried to take the power supply back, but you have to go through the regular line instead of the customer service line to do returns now. And it was like wrapped around the inside of the store twice. And I wasn't going to spend like 4 hours in line for refund on that power supply. So I'll try one more time. Otherwise, I'll find a project for it. Got some DDR4, 16 gigabytes of RAM, the 3200 kit. I'll be. It's a decent amount of RAM, but also upgradable. I was, however, able to reuse the old operating system that was set up on an SSD, and that has been really helpful. And you know, after doing the upgrades and everything, it's working really well. I did have to reinstall Plex, and my old library setup was still there and in place and working. And you know, the same with Docker, because when you go from 19 to 20, you have to remove all of the packages that aren't native packages.
Yeah, and Plex is a PPA. Is that how you're running it?
At the time, yeah. And you got to remember, like Docker, like old Docker, you couldn't run it like regularly.
Oh yeah, I complained about
the
this.
one that was in the repo was terrible and didn't
I don't
work
remember
at all.
where, but yeah.
We talked about it. You and I talked about this a couple of, I
Okay,
think it was
good.
last week. Or no, it couldn't have been last week because you weren't on. Oh wait, no, you were on last week. You weren't on yesterday. That's
Right,
what it
right.
was.
Yeah, we were just talking about the way that you set it up, and yeah, the fact that you had to add a PPA. I mean, they still recommend doing it that way though. So
Right.
you know.
Right. So I had to reinstall it again, and all my old images showed up, and I was able to pick up right where I was before. The only other issue that I've had, other than Resilio Sync and user permissions, is that some of my icons, the icon images, aren't really as they're supposed to be, going from 18 to 19 to 20. So I haven't figured that out yet. And because I moved the whole server out to the garage and I'm using it as a desktop as well, I am using pSensor to keep track of the temperatures. I purchased a dock for the Dell Venue Pro 7130 to test out some of the functions because I had read that the HDMI and DisplayPort output did not work on Linux. But I got it, I hooked it up, and HDMI worked right out of the box. And I thought it may have been DisplayLink, which tends to eat a lot of processor on Linux, but in checking, I had never installed it on that tablet with that current operating system. And for those that don't know, DisplayLink is the USB to video output technology that most adapters and docks and port replicators use. Very optimized for Windows, and thankfully they do make a driver for Linux, but there's a lot of overhead with it. But with the way this is set up, it works fine. It works like a native HDMI port. So very easily you could use this as a convergence device. And I will be working on a full setup for that. The dock costs a bit more than I would like, but I'm looking for ways to bring the cost down, as it's the power supply that costs the most. So I'll see what I can find out there. And I did get a lot of 10 ThinkPad USB 3.0 docks for $25. Now I call them docks because that's what they're called online, but really they're port replicators. They fit in the USB 3.0 port. They should have been here already, but there's some kind of delay. I was really hoping to get to work on them this weekend, and I still need to buy power supplies for them, but I want to see how many work before I start buying power supplies. And the average selling price on those is about $40 with power supply, so I should easily be able to make my money back and have extra devices. And I have to install Windows on 3 devices in the next couple of weeks. That's my eldest daughter's computer, my middle child's computer, and my wife's computer. So I've already got my eldest child's done this morning. And so I've still got the other 2 to work on. And that's really all I've got. Tony Watts, how about you?
Well, I've missed a couple episodes. So I've been up to kind of a lot, but I'll try to keep the list a little short, I guess. Yeah. Well, it's been a while, so I've missed chatting with you guys. But a lot of music stuff. That's part of the reason I haven't been able to come on here for a little bit. I have been doing some solo gigs, not as busy as I used to be before the COVID slowdown, but I did between June and July have 5 gigs over about 6 weeks. So I was playing almost every weekend there for a bit. So that's good, but things have slowed down a little bit. But as far as the gigs are concerned, I feel pretty good when they're outside, and I had some really good outdoor gigs. I've been really lucky there. I have a brewery gig still coming up yet next month, but things are slowing down. I'm looking at 1 or 2 a month now. All right, this is the part I'm really excited about, probably out of all the things I have to talk about. Not Linux related, but it is technology and music related. I got a new guitar amp. It's a Boss Katana, and those are basically they're an amp that is, I guess, is technically not a modeling amp, but it does have different amp sounds in it, as well as just about every guitar effect pedal you can think of is built into the amp itself. And you use it with Boss Tone Studio software, and you can kind of configure, preset sound settings with whatever effect pedals you want and whatever amp sounds, distortion, all that kind of stuff. So it's really, they're very affordable. They're very powerful. They do a lot. The software I like too, other than the fact that, of course, I have to use this operating system I won't mention the name of, but yeah, I've really been having a ton of fun with that. I got this amp used with the foot switch included, which to me is really important because you can set up to 8 preset different sounds you can kind of switch back and forth from, and I don't know how other people do it, but when I play guitar, my hands are occupied doing that, so kind of need to be able to switch the sounds with the foot switch. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's the technology is really just amazing. I'm thinking back to when I was first playing guitar and getting gear and stuff, and if you're just starting out playing music now or thinking about it, it is a really good time to be doing that, I have to say. A lot of people have extra time on their hands these days, and the gear is a lot cheaper than it used to be and does a lot more than it ever has. So that Boss Tone Studio software, unfortunately, does require Windows, and I have another program or 2 for music that require Windows as well. So I did rework my studio computer, and for what I need it to do, I think it's set up about as simple as it can be. I got another SSD and put it in there. It's a 120 gig SSD, which is, I think, enough for one OS. I have 1 SSD for Linux Mint, 1 for Windows, and then a spinning drive that's just storage to be shared between the 2. So that's the way it's set up now. Still running the same Linux Mint install I've been running for quite a long time. I did use Ventoy for the Windows install, and have also used Ventoy for a bunch of other stuff. I know you guys have been talking about that a bit last couple episodes.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's really cool. It's made it really easy for me to test a few distros out when you can have them kind of all on that one startup USB. You just try one, reboot, try another one. So I've played around with Pop OS, Manjaro, a couple other distros that I've not really played around with before. It's been fun. So I got a Chromebook for my kids' school, and I got to play with it for a little bit. Although as I'm sitting here, I was trying to get it to charge, and they either sent me a faulty charger or the port's bad. It came fully charged, and I've been playing around with it, and now that it's time to charge it again, that seems to be a problem. So, that might have to go back. But in the time that it was powered on, I did play around with it, and the Linux beta that's in Chrome OS, and installed Linux. It installs Linux as a virtual machine, and it's running Debian 10 Buster underneath. But to do this, you just go into the settings, and there's a Linux beta option. You just turn it on, and it'll ask you to how much storage you want to allocate to Linux. You can always kind of go back in and change that. It starts out with a couple of gigs on this machine. And it installs, and next thing you know, you're dropped into a terminal. You can apt install your heart away. Pretty cool. Let's see. Other than that, I did also get a new grill I got it for Father's Day, so that's how long since I've been on, I guess. But been doing a lot of grilling and barbecuing. So what I got was a char griller name brand, but it's real similar to like the Big Green Egg, that shape and style of cooker. Not as expensive, which is good because but very cool. Good for smoking, and you can keep the same load of charcoal in it for a very long time. I've done some 10-hour cooks, some ribs, some pork shoulder, some doing some barbecue and some grilling.
Oh man, that sounds so good. I've been thinking about doing more and more of that, but here lately it's been well over 100 degrees every single day. So but lately it's started to cool down just a bit. Like today, I think it's going to be in the mid 90s. So it's still not comfortable, but it's good enough to go out and grill. So I think I might as well, man. You've inspired me.
You're a little bit further.
Only in Texas is that getting
Yeah, you're a little
cooler.
bit further
Right.
west, and we've been having a lot of the mid 90s, but the humidity has been just horrible.
Yeah, the good thing about being closer to the desert is that we get less of the humidity, but slightly higher temperatures overall. But yeah, without the humidity, you can handle it.
I'd much prefer a dry heat.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's about what I've been up to. Let's see what's going on in the news.
News time. So in the news, we've got a few different things that we're looking at, and a couple of last-second entries that I saw on. I think one of them was on Twitter, and the other one was from Telegram. So just shoved those in there real quick. So the first one that we've got up is Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix is shifting focus. So over these past few weeks, I mean, you would get, well, I guess it was every couple of weeks, there would be a whole new spun-up version of Ubuntu Cinnamon to test out, and that is all coming to an end, at least temporarily. Because what's going on is Joshua Pesach, who we had on the show a few months ago, he is having to get everything past what are called the Masters of the Universe. So, I mean, he's having to spend a whole lot of time getting rid of all of what is essentially just cruft around the distribution so it can be accepted as a real, live Ubuntu flavor. And so to that end, he is really going to slow down on making actual changes to the desktop environment and just essentially just cooling that off so that he can focus on becoming a flavor. So if you've been on Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix, don't expect a whole lot of changes these next few weeks. But I think the great part of all of this is that it's going to end up being a real live flavor that will eventually start getting updates again. So good on him. It's a hard decision to make, but I'm glad that he did it so that he can move forward. So next up, we had Android 10 coming to Pine Phone. Moss, is this your fault?
No, I didn't do that one. I don't
Ooh,
think.
Whose fault is this?
Might be my fault. And I'm not sure how
Oh.
big of news this is. Does anybody care? I don't know. But
I mean-
Android 10 is coming.
If I had
Yeah.
a Pine phone, I'd want Linux
Right.
on it.
Yeah, I thought it was kind
that
of...
would be my whole reason for buying a Pine Phone in the first place, right? I mean, you got UB ports,
Yep.
and then I mean, I don't know. I like UB ports, and I think I would probably go with that over Android. But the option to have Android is huge.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, I think a lot of people are rightfully saying, who cares? Why would you ever do this to this phone? That's, the whole idea is it's a Linux phone. But I think even at the small amount of money that we're talking about for this phone, I like to repurpose things, and you never know if I want to kick a device down to somebody else to use, or use it as a backup, or for somebody else as a backup. Having options like that's kind of cool to have.
With
So-
Android 10, you're going to find a lot more people that are willing to use it as a daily driver.
That's
Right.
the biggest part. Yep.
Yeah, and not only that, but there's still dual booting. So
Yes.
when you want to mess around with, Ubuntu Touch or UB ports, you can, but when you just need it to plain work without all the development that's still going on, you switch over to Android 10.
Exactly.
Yeah, but is there enough storage on a Pine phone to be dual
I'm
booting?
pretty sure that they're set up to be able to boot from micro SD card. So it's as simple as popping out a micro SD card and popping in a different one if you want to dual boot.
Okay, that sounds right. But the specs are not the greatest on the Pine phone. That's not why we love
For
it.
sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
But,
It's not a
things
spec
change.
thing.
Sometimes people's needs change too, right? I mean, you may have that certain app you suddenly decide that you can't live without, that you didn't need yesterday. So options are good.
Well, on top of that, I think a lot of people that have Pine phones have them as a secondary phone, right? So now that you can
Yep.
put Android on the thing, what happens when you lose your phone down the toilet? Now you have a real actual backup that is very usable, and you can still throw UB ports on there too as a dual boot.
Yes. And when we're talking about open source, Android itself is open source with, F-Droid or something like that on top of it. So, there
Exactly.
is that. It's just another option.
Man,
But
I
if it
think
were
that's
me-
only good.
Yes, I do think all of this is good. More options are always good. If it were a device that I had in my hands, it would always be running one of the Linux flavors, but, options are good.
Yeah, I think if I really want one, but I just can't justify it, right? I mean, I would rather have a Pinebook Pro if I'm gonna drop a couple $100 on something. But I mean, yeah, I would have what I want on it, like UB ports, but I would always have that SD card. If it's like Joe is saying, and you could just pop it on an SD card, then I would always have that. I would leave it in the drawer, and it would be my emergency SD card just in case I needed it. Good stuff, man. Good on them. Good on the developers that are bringing this to the Pine phone. Next up, Blender Foundation is hiring. So Moss, I saw the jobs, and that's you, right? You're gonna do their editing now.
Yeah, I wish I didn't hear about this until just now.
Yeah, this is my fault. Kind of, I guess, a little obvious, but yeah, the Blender Foundation has been actually a lot of different of the ones of the creative apps have been getting a lot of money to their dev funds and have been recipients of some grants and stuff like that. And Blender Foundation has been continuing to ramp that stuff up, and some of the people that had been working there are moving on to other things, and some people are, and they're also expanding, and so they're looking specifically for a senior backend developer, so the stuff that goes on to manage all the stuff that goes on with their wiki, the infrastructure, because they self-host basically everything. They're not using GitHub for their version control. They're self-hosting everything themselves using Fabricator and a bunch of other tools that they're managing. So they need somebody to help with that sort of thing. They need an actual person that's a writer or a blogger to basically get content for the, and sometimes it's not just written content, sometimes it's scripts, and I think the catch there is you also have to be fluent in Dutch. So that one's a bit of an interesting one there. So brush up on your Dutch if you're interested on that one. The other one, which is actually more of a remote job, specific to the North American time zones, is the developer community coordinator. So that's basically helping one of the things that especially for a project like Blender or even anything that has this level of exposure and has such a large user base, you have way more requests and thoughts and ideas coming from the community than you actually have developers to field those requests. And I'm not just talking about bug reports, but I'm also talking about, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Blender did this or that? And being able to sort of triage those things and make it so that other people can do it. I think that's really what they're looking for someone to hold that kind of position. So it's they announced this not too long ago, and so it'll be interesting to see who actually starts filling those positions.
That's pretty awesome. Thank you for putting that in there. I really do appreciate that. So hopefully anybody listening to the show, if that's you, go to blender.org/jobs and apply. Next up, treasurer changes in the Manjaro project. Okay, whose fault is this one?
That one was mine. That one was mine. We only have one side of the story at this time, so I'm going to underplay it as much as possible. But that side was from the outgoing treasurer, and he basically said that the project manager was making unilateral decisions on spending large amounts of money for things that were not directly related to the project, and he objected to that, and apparently the board did not back him up, and he wound up getting fired. I think he got replaced, but he at least got fired. And I don't want to get into the he said, she said, since we don't have her point of view.
Right. Yeah. This is not looking great overall. Well, I really hope these guys get it all sorted out, and I really hope that things work out for the best, because this is, I don't know, it's never a good look when you get stuff like this. But I mean, luckily for us, it doesn't really seem that anything as far as the Manjaro project itself, people using the OS was affected at all, other than money moving around in ways that I guess it shouldn't have. Anyhow, next up, Gecko Static. Oh, go ahead.
And this one's mine.
Oh, yeah. You're going to have to tell me what the heck any of this stuff is. Yeah, Gecko Static 152 is out. What?
Well, it's OpenSUSE 15.2, and they just dropped the decimal point.
Oh, that makes sense.
They take OpenSUSE, which is a bear to install. I think last episode we talked about how much difficulty I had, even with Joshua Hawk helping me with it, getting it installed and working. And I finally got it installed and working, but I had to use BIOS boot to get to it. Well, Gecko took all that, put Calamaris installer on it, and I go, boom, and I'm in. It still says it's OpenSUSE Leap 15.2, but it's Gecko, and it's easy to use, and at least as easy as you can get with OpenSUSE. It still looks maybe a decade out of date design-wise, but I like the watery green background on it, the wallpaper.
Oh, hold on, wait.
So it's a fun little way.
Let me ask something real quick. Hold on, because if you were to replace OpenSUSE with Ubuntu and Gecko Static with Linux Mint, you're describing the same exact thing, aren't you?
Not really. I think Gecko Static is a lot closer to OpenSUSE than Mint is to
It's
Ubuntu.
probably more like a CentOS Red Hat pairing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but not enough of us know about CentOS and Red Hat to be able to have that be a valid comparison, I don't know. They basically all they really did was take OpenSUSE and put Calamaris installer on it and have it install normally to Grub like everything else does, and that's the main change right there. Calamaris and Grub. But it's a good distro. You should try it out. It's fun. It makes OpenSUSE less painful, put it that way. I don't want Cubicle Nate to take my head off for saying things like that, but I do have it installed on my laptop.
Nice. So how's it going? Is it easy? Is it, why would I want to run this?
If you wanted to try out OpenSUSE, that's the main thing. OpenSUSE is the second most profitable, or SUSE Enterprise is the second most profitable Linux distro in the world. It's ahead of Ubuntu by a wide margin, but Ubuntu has so many fingers and so many pies, it's hard to keep them all making profit.
It's very true, but like, Rel 8 is probably a huge moneymaker, but I sure wouldn't want to run it on my desktop.
Well, that's the thing. Gecko makes it easy to run it on your desktop. That's the main thing. And SUSE operates a little differently from other things, and you'd have to try it out to find out whether you'd like it or not.
Actually, on the desktop side of things, because SUSE is leading on that leaning on the enterprise side of things, much like RHEL is. If you are talking about running proprietary applications, they need to have something that is relative to the enterprise to install to. And SUSE and RHEL tend to be the baselines for those. So if you want to run some sort of proprietary app that's only released with those sorts of packages, that's up until we started having Flatpaks and snaps and those sort of things. That's you basically had to run those distros as your OS.
Very true. Yeah. All right, next up, Mr. Dale Miracle. Thank you for this one. System 76 embraces core boot. So a few weeks ago, we heard that System 76 and Tuxedo Computers were coming out with new AMD lineups, and does that not make me happy? I love the fact that AMD is really starting to penetrate all these all the laptops as far as CPUs go, and Lenovo before them, right? I guess, though not a specific Linux laptop, but you can get Linux on them. So System 76, though, is taking it an extra step, which is they're adding core boot to the mix. So nothing yet, but they're, I believe the post was something to the effect of we're looking into core boot and planning on actually implementing it for our laptops. So letting it be an option for the laptops, man. And this is fantastic. For those freedom lovers, this is for you. If you want a Linux laptop with core boot on it, yeah, this might be your next purchase. But it's just really interesting to see. I'm really happy that System 76 is really embracing the freedom side of everything. It'll make a whole lot more people happy. And lastly, I don't think I put this in here. So thank you to whoever did it. The video that I had mentioned earlier on that I made on my Terminal Tricks channel, the Debian apt pinning thing. So, all right, there's a little backstory to this. Here's the deal. So, with Linux Mint forbidding snaps by default in Linux Mint 20, this has kind of raised a few questions. The main one being, well, how the heck do I get Chromium now? Well, the easy way is to just do it the way that Ubuntu wants you to do it. And that is remove the nosnap.pref file and just install snapd, right? I mean, that's certainly one of the easiest ways to get it done. It's up to date, blah, 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 right? The whole nine. Well, if you go to the Linux Mint forum and if you go to the posts about the new versions of Linux Mint, you will see that there are a plethora of people that just don't want snap. And that's fine. This is an answer to that. You can do it a few different ways, really. I mean, you can add a PPA. And to be honest with you, making a video about how to add a PPA is just, it's a little redundant, right? I mean, it's one command, man, and then you just install Chromium. It's no big deal. So I would assume that even the newest of users, if you can Google how to install a PPA, you're golden, right? So there's no need to make a video about that. However, Debian apt pinning. So apt pinning is this idea that you can grab repositories that are not meant for your distribution and say, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that. I just want this little bit out of this repository, right? So the way, one of the solutions that Clem has put forth is this Debian apt pinning thing. So all you really do is you go and grab the Debian 10 repositories, both the main repository and the security repository, and you add them to Linux Mint. Well, this can become a nightmare really fast. because Linux Mint, in a lot of ways, has newer packages than Debian does, which means that if you put this repository in there, they're going to fight. And it's going to say something to the effect of, hey, you got to downgrade a bajillion packages because, you told me to use Debian now, so that's what I'm going to do. So this is where apt pinning comes in. You basically say, I don't want nothing except Chromium from the Debian repository. The cool thing about this, though, is that you get Chromium in the way that you expect. Through apt. When you do apt install Chromium, it gives you Chromium, not the dummy package that Linux Mint has decided to put in there instead of some kind of cool toggle to get rid of the nosnap.pref. I'm not salty about that at all. and right, I mean, it's just Chromium. You just get Chromium. So it is a little involved, which is the whole reason that I have a video for it. So yeah, go check out if you want Chromium as your typical deb apt install Chromium, and it doesn't throw snap in there for any reason. This is the way that you want to do it. So check it out. It's not too terribly hard. Everything that you need to do is in a GitHub repo, just in a markdown file. You can copy and paste every command you need to run. In the video, I do mention, I do explain what you're doing when you're copying and pasting this stuff, because what is the general rule of Linux and copying and pasting crap into the terminal? Don't. So the idea is I explain what you're copying and pasting so that if you take that security posture, you can feel better about what it is that you're doing.
So Leo, why can't Clem just grab the Debian apt of Chromium and the deb file of Chromium from Debian and put it in our repos?
So as far as I know, it's they're stuck, right? I mean, they are going to stay on 83 and backport all the security fixes. I think if you're running Debian, you need to tell me how this is going to work. But anyway, so there's just going to be a lot of weirdness that comes along with that. So the easiest way to deal with that, as far as work on the Linux Mint side and getting your updates on the Debian side, is just to add the Debian repo. I think Linux Mint wanted to step out of it. They did not want to touch it at all. So that's a big part of that.
You'd have to be a little concerned with that being somewhat future-proof, because I'm reasonably sure that deb is not statically compiled, which means you're relying right now on forward compatibility with old libraries to new libraries. The second that the ABI changes, that's not going to work anymore. That's the only real downside.
So yeah, and I mean, I don't know. There's a million different ways to solve this issue, and this was the hardest one, so that's why I attacked it with a video. So I'll let you know. I mean, on both my Linux Mint boxes, I have Chromium, not because I like Chromium, but because, well, number one, I wanted to make the video, so I kind of had to do it a few times just to make sure that my video wasn't gonna blow up in anybody's face. But the other is that, I mean, this is how I manage all the mintCast stuff. I've always done it through Chromium, so I was like, just pull in Chromium and make it work. To be honest with you, this is not an issue that I care too terribly much about. If Chromium were to go away, like even worse than it is now, then I would just move to Vivaldi or something else. It is not that big of an issue for me, but it is for some, and I think that's important.
That can be an issue for some people when they're doing, like, if you're doing, like, a lot of people who be running Mint are obviously, they may be on the creative side of things, and so talking about website development and that sort of thing, you need to have some sort of Chrome analog to make sure that the site functions, because not everybody fully adheres to standards, so you have to do all these bench tests for all your websites. And so, I mean, that's probably the biggest, aside from, like, from the user land sort of things, if Chromium stopped working, period, for most people, fine. They're either going to go someplace else, or there's perfectly fine other browsers that are out there. But if you're actually trying to build content and build sites and build things that people are using on, unfortunately, you have to test it on the things that they're using it on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a big part of that is that Google Chrome itself is very easy to install on any Linux distribution, and it does not depend at all on what the leader of the distribution decides as far as what they're going to add to their add or remove from their repository. So I think in general, if you want your Chromeness, then Chrome is probably going to be one of the best ways to do that, because that's what everybody is going to have. And Chromium is a nice replacement for that.
Sounds like a good time to do the security update.
I think you're right. So let's go down.
Get Google off my computer. Man.
I know, right? Let's get down there. So in the security update, we had our normal stuff. I mean, there's like ASUS routers having cross-site scripting issues where certificates are not being validated, and it'll just download any old random firmware. But that's like every time we do a show. It's TP-Link one week, it's Netgear another link. It's the same issues over and over and over again with these home-based things. So we'll switch gears just a little bit. Let's talk about the Twitter hack. Have any of you guys actually been kind of following along with what is going on here?
Yeah. Well, from what I understood, yes, it was a hack, but it was a social engineering hack, more or less. Somebody convinced one of the people that work at Twitter that they were somebody else that worked at Twitter and they needed access to a specific tool to be able to handle a password problem. And then this tool allowed them to get access to several high profiles people accounts and post about, hey, if you donate X amount of Bitcoin to such and such account, then I will match it double back to you. And so, a whole bunch of people listened and did it. I think it came out to, what was it, $120,000-ish in Bitcoin. And yeah, all because people didn't follow the basic rules when it comes to sharing internal tools.
This is so good, man. It just made me laugh. This is why I included it in the show today, man, because yeah, it was what was it, Slack? They had invited someone that social engineered their way into their Slack, and at the top of the Slack they had the credentials pinned. Like what? This is like post-it note level on the monitor kind of thing. And it's like, wow. So it's not just that one person in accounting that just absolutely refuses to do any, hold any kind of decent security posture. It's one of the biggest companies, web companies in the world, man. Like, my sides. I can't.
Oh, and by the way, we
can't
have
even.
this tool that allows us to reset everybody's password whenever we want to. So,
But
have
it's not
fun.
just and it's not just that either. It's these tools allow you to tweet as someone, which that's obviously what happened, and then they allow you to dig into DMs of people. Which one of the things in the article that I have linked here about that is that like these people are journalists in some cases, and they are putting themselves in danger by reporting on some things. So by having the ability to dig into that, I mean, you could possibly be exposing somebody, and that is a dangerous game to be playing.
Yeah, but okay, yeah, the backlog of DMs is one thing that they probably shouldn't have access to, but they do need a way to be able to reset somebody's password if they forget it or
sure.
something. So
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely know these tools have to exist, and this is not me saying that they shouldn't exist. Just that don't post it at the top of a thing, man. Like, what? This is horrible. That is so horrible.
yes, but people are the weakest point of security in any system.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I mean, we see it again. It's people that trip over themselves for one reason or another and then expose way more information than should have ever been exposed in any given situation.
Just ask Kevin Mitnick. He'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this guy is master social engineer, right? I mean, you just ask the right questions in the right tone of voice and anybody will give up anything. It's crazy. My favorite part about this story is number one, that it's still ongoing, right? They're still investigating what exactly had gone down. These are just tidbits of what we know. But the biggest part of what we know was publicly known from day one. It was the Nigerian prince hack. This is the email that you got back in 1992 from your AOL.com, and it was like, hey, if you give me $5,000, I can massage the bank, and then I'll send you $20 million. This is the same hack. This is the same thing. That is my favorite part about the story. It's not the losing the credentials because you had them pinned in the most obvious place. It's not that someone was social engineered to allow someone that was not part of the team into the Slack channel and onto the team. It was none of that. It was the fact that it was the Nigerian prince thing. Yeah.
But the statistics there.
Yeah, but they used real princes.
The statistics there are actually
True.
pretty good if you think about it. I mean, $120,000 total. Yeah, it's probably quite a few people, but the people that they picked to send out these tweets, as it were very high profile people that had a large volume of followers. So
Absolutely.
statistically, it was only a small portion of those followers that got pinged.
Well, I mean, it just goes to show, man.
Yeah, like I said, they used real princes. They used Obama. They used Elon Musk. They used some really big name people. And you some people put a lot of
It's a
trust
little
in these.
disadvantage of having that little blue check mark next to your name.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and it was only people that were verified. So I mean, so apparently these God mode tools allow internal employees to be able to kind of manipulate those particular accounts. Not necessarily in a bad way, just that you can tweet as them, as for example. And yeah,
Elon
man.
Musk is known for his eccentricity, so
Yeah, I could totally see something like that coming from him. But yeah,
Yep.
long story short, yeah, don't send money to anybody on the internet that you don't know. Seriously, you don't know Bill Gates or Elon Musk for that matter. Oh wow. Anyway,
If you want to send someone money that you don't know, send it to me.
there you go. There you go. So I just wanted to break up the monotony of really bad home router attacks and talk about something that I could laugh about. So anyway, Twitter got hacked. That's funny. And hacked in quotes, by the way. Anyway, so that'll do it for our security update. Let's move on down to Linux innards. Jason, again, welcome to mintCast. I'm so glad you're here, and I want to pick your brain about this whole Blender thing.
Do it. Brain is ready for picking. I was going to say it's some sort of weird pun about innards and entrails, but it just I couldn't make it work. So we'll just go with picking brains.
You were thinking too much about that shrunken head, man. So, welcome again to the show. I'm glad to have you here. So I want to know who you are and just a little bit about you. So what do you do?
I am. I'm Jason Van Gumster, and I have been kicking around the general Linux and open source community for quite some time, and I've been using it not necessarily from the technology side, but more on the creative side. So I use Blender, GIMP, Inkscape, Krita, MyPaint, all these different applications to create. Actually just to create, but I mean my focus tends to be on animation, video, image, sort of visual art sort of stuff. I'm not adept with the musics like Tony Watts is here, and I write, so I do the general creation thing, and my focus has been mostly on animation in 3D. So Blender is like a gigantic thing for me. I've been using Blender since before it went open source, which, by the way, there's a really cool story for that if we have time to talk about that, if no one knows it. But yeah, I started using Linux and Blender around the same time, 1997, 1998. So I am officially what they refer to as a Blender old fart. And I've been using it since before it had Undo, and been doing all sorts of fun 3D modeling and animation stuff with it. And ultimately, I also ended up writing Blender for Dummies, which is a sort of beginner reference for using Blender. And we've been updating that every 2-ish years or so. So the 4th edition of that just came out back in February. And yeah, it's been a fun ride doing those sort of things. And yeah, my entire stack's open source for it. So.
Cool. So right now is a really good time to go buy that book then.
I mean, I wouldn't complain.
Well, yeah, and because it's updated, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
got a lot of the new fanciness that Blender has come out with in the past couple of years.
Well, especially the Blender 2.80 series just recently got released at the end of last year and has been going through to this year. And actually, Blender is one of the few applications that has an LTS, and they just started doing that this year. With Blender 283. So they actually have a long-term support version of Blender for studios and stuff like that to do that. And it's actually really good for people who write documentation like myself.
Exactly.
Because Blender is such a stupidly fast-moving project. I refer to it as a Swiss Army chainsaw because it can do basically anything with images. And because of that, there's so much going on, and development releases happen so quickly, and so much changes. It's very difficult to keep up with it. And so, from a studio standpoint, for their reasons, and from a documentation standpoint, having an LTS where you can say, all right, this is the interface. These are the things that are mostly working, and we're only going to worry about like fixing bugs and things that are broken on this version is really beneficial.
So, would you recommend running on the LTS or running on the bleeding edge as far as someone getting started?
I would certainly recommend the LTS. That's where a lot of the documentation is focused, especially if you had the choice between like the 2.779 series, which is the last release, and 2.83, and any in that class, the entire user interface has been overhauled, and most of the tutorials and stuff and documentation have been updated to support that. And it's been a transition for those of us that have been using Blender for a long time, because some of our basic defaults have changed, and we've either had to switch them back ourselves or just adapt. But for anybody who's new to it, it should be a lot more comfortable than it used to be. And like I said, the documentation fits a lot better for the LTS. Now, if you want to play with the latest and greatest, because one of the really great things that the Blender developer team does is talk about what they're doing while they're doing it. And so they'll put out little videos or animations or screen sharing bits of features that are in development and get people excited about them. And so if you want to play with that stuff, they make it really easy for you to install it and play with it. But if you're just trying to start and still trying to learn with it, the LTS is the way to go.
Got it. And so the newest Blender for Dummies, is that one based on the LTS as well?
It's based on just before the LTS. So I have a little bit. Yeah, they didn't tell anybody that they were doing an LTS when they were doing this. I think it's one of the realizations they had when they started trying to. For a long time, Blender has always been specifically more for Blender users. It's been more for, well, if you're using Blender, you wrap your head around how Blender works, and they're improving it for the people who already use Blender, which is natural and good. But more and more, it's gotten more popular in studios, and more people in studios have started to want to use it more, and they have their own workflows and they have their own ways of behaving, and so their influence is becoming greater heard. And so because of that, that's where they're starting to support these studios, people, the television production, animation production, film production places that are actually using the application. They need that level of stability, and I think they actually came to that realization as they started to support them. It's like, okay, well, we're supporting them, but we still want to develop stuff. How do we reconcile those two things, which give you a little bit of competing interests?
Very interesting. Cool. Man, I've learned more in like the past 10 minutes than any other point in my life about Blender. This is awesome. So a little bit more about you. So what was your first Linux experience? And then off the back of that, what did you end up on Linux distro-wise?
Yeah, my first distro was before Red Hat Enterprise Linux came out. So it was actually Red Hat. It was Red Hat 5.5. And the only reason I remember that is that the installer was an in-curses installer. And from a locale, you could choose Redneck as a language choice, which made me giggle. Yeah. This is a time when open source was not taking itself too seriously and having a lot of fun with itself in some places. And so, yeah, one of the locales was actually Redneck, and you could run the installer in Redneck. It didn't translate once it was installed, but the installer chose that locale, which was kind of funny. But yeah, I started in Red Hat 5.5, and worked my way through that, and that's when we were dealing with RPM dependency hells and I got really frustrated with when I wanted to install something, especially at that time Blender was starting to become open source and starting to do its thing, and just trying to stay up to speed with those sort of things. The dependencies just kept biting me, so I switched over to Slackware, which is, from what I understand, backwards from how most people did it. Most people that I know have started in Slackware and started working into the more package management side of things, and I really enjoyed Slackware. Had a lot of fun with it, but I also started realizing that I was compiling all of the applications I wanted to use, because again, Slackware, like Debian, not exactly a fast-moving operating system in terms of keeping up to date with the latest and greatest of things. So when I wanted to run something that was just coming out, I had to go ahead and compile it, which at that point I was like, well, since I'm compiling everything, let me just run Gentoo. And,
Wait a minute.
yeah. So I jumped over to Gentoo for a good long while, and I actually really enjoyed the port system. Their package management system is really quite nice, but after a few years and some really some situations where I had to basically recompile the whole operating system for an ABI change, a low-level ABI change, and just recompiling OpenOffice, it takes a long time. Or OpenOffice and then LibreOffice, which didn't get any slower, faster for compiling. It's great. It's better in terms of features, but the time it takes to compile it is egregiously long. So after a number of those, I still like the rolling release. So I sort of dialed it back a little bit and stumbled across Arch Linux, or Arch Linux, depending on who you talk to, how you pronounce it. And that's where I've been living for the past 12-ish years now. I've flirted here and there. I've run Ubuntu Studio for a stretch on a laptop, because I needed something that I could install pretty fast on laptop, and laptops are good for throwaway OSs, because if the laptop blows up, I can just replace it or replace the OS, and that's sort of the way to deal with that. So yeah, I did Ubuntu Studio for a stretch there. For my family's computer, we were running Mint for a while there. I think most of those computers now have been switched over to Ubuntu Mate. So mostly because that's an interface they're familiar with. Because not only am I an Arch user, Enlightenment is my preferred desktop environment.
So you should be switching them to
Bodhi.
Bodhi.
But the thing is, Bodhi, their desktop manager is a fork of Enlightenment. It's not the current Enlightenment development set. So I have actually been liking working with straight up Enlightenment, and so I haven't been going over to Bodhi on that one. But though I could migrate my family to Bodhi, but their familiarity is with what their familiarity is, and so sort of the Mate thing sort of fits better for them.
Do you use the standard Mate interface for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've started to customize a little bit on their own and get things to play the way they like to. But my two boys they're not quite in the mood to tinker with the OS just yet. I'm pushing them slightly in that direction. Like, you could change that. You could change this thing to the other thing you like, and just style it however you want. But right now they're more interested in either making things with their computers or, of course, playing games with them. And my wife, likewise, she's a graphic designer, so she's while she enjoys making things look the way she wants them to look, once she basically changes the desktop wallpaper, she doesn't really care much more beyond that. Maybe giving herself a dark version of the interface, and then she's off to the races doing her thing.
So just a quick aside. So your wife, as a graphic designer, does she do all that on Linux?
Most of it. She will do, well, no, actually, let me rephrase that. She does all of her stuff in Linux. There are a few things that she does where, like page layout. InDesign right now is the application that you want. That it's still kind of the leading application for that. Scribus is great, but if you're doing multi-page stuff or like chapter-based stuff with a lot of graphics and stuff like that, Scribus doesn't really have the infrastructure to maintain that quite as nicely as it could. And so InDesign's kind of the necessary thing. And so she does run Windows in a VM to whenever she has to boot up the Adobe suite.
That's really cool. I just wanted to make sure that you and your family didn't happen to have the holy grail of how to just totally move somebody over like a graphic designer to Linux. So,
I mean, I'm doing it, but I'm still apparently an anomaly. So,
well, hopefully that changes more and more as we move along. I do prefer it, and there are just some things that my wife can't do. on Linux. So yeah, stuck with Windows for a lot of things. So we kind of heard why you don't go Linux Mint. Could I summarize that by saying you just like the latest and greatest and getting dirty with Linux?
I think that's a fair assessment. I do like the Pac-Man package management system, and I like a rolling release. I that's one of the things that I didn't realize how much when I've worked with other distros periodically, toying with them. The fact that like because I'll run for some of the day job stuff that I do have CentOS running for like render farm basic stuff and compute. And yeah, it's like, oh, well, a new distro just came out, and I have to upgrade everything to that.
That feeling is killer, man.
It's unpleasant for a number of things. So yeah, as a graphic designer, I also end up maintaining compute infrastructure for some reason, which is an extension of my job description no one ever expected, but it's fine because I get to keep playing with Linux as I do design work as well. When I get bored with one thing, I can shift over to another.
That's cool. That's a really nice perk. So you're talking about doing rendering farms and running a lot of this on CentOS. So what does your workflow actually look like on a day-to-day when it comes to stuff like that?
It varies. Partially by design, but partially it depends on what the project is. I guess that's the biggest thing. For anything that's going to be more of a longer term project that I'm not just going to sort of play around with, I actually start analog first. So if I'm doing something that's story based, or I'm doing even like a 3D model or a sculpt, oftentimes I will sit down with a piece of paper, go away from the computer, and I will sketch it from there. It's a little awkward because sometimes, I mean, I have nice things for drawing and painting on the computer, but there's something nice about the tactility of working with your hands in meat space to do what you want. And I do have a remarkable tablet, which is a touch sensitive e-ink display, which is super sweet, by the way. It's like, and it also runs Linux. But I will pull that out, or I'll pull out my actual paper sketchbook, and I will start there, right? Go analog, basically get the idea down, because making changes there are cheap, but it's while making changes on a computer are also just as sort of cheap from a you just delete it when you're done with it. You also have a history with a piece of paper, because I can look back at it and say, oh, that's where I was going with that, or oh, that kind of sucked. I can change that around. And so starting analog is usually where I go with it. And then once that plan is in place, then it depends really on the work. So if you're working in animation, for instance, animation for the most part is one of the art forms I think is inherently collaborative. Unless you're willing to work for years and years and years on the same thing, or you're working on something very, very small, you're not going to do it by yourself. You usually have a team of people you work with, right? People specialize, especially when it comes to 3D animation. People specialize in different things. You have people who are focused on rigging. You have people who are focused on the animation part of that. People who are going to make the models, textures. Everybody sort of has a bit of a specialization in that, and so it's an inherently collaborative medium. So having that paper plan really gets you to move forward with what you're going to be doing next. And then, I mean, you could use Blender for cool tools, stuff like that. People have actually done their storyboards because Blender has a built-in video sequencer. And so you can actually sketch out your individual frames for your storyboard. You can do that in Krita or MyPaint or on a piece of paper and scan it, and then pull those in as individual frames in Blender, and those end up being what's called an animatic, which works your flow together from basically it's an animated storyboard, and you work your way through that and get your timing right and get things playing nicely. Because one of the things about and I'm going to talk a lot about animation because it's where a lot of my passion lies, but one of the things about animation is the farther you go down the pipe in terms of an animation production, the more expensive changes get, the more time-consuming changes get, because you basically have to start at the beginning, because everything compiles and works on top of each other. And so you start with your storyboard, because that's on paper. Destroying little frames and thumbnail sketches on Post-it notes is really cheap and easy to do. You get those things that you like, you throw it into something like Blender. You can do it in Kden Live as well, and you basically make a video called an animatic that sets your timing up. And then now that once you have your timing up, okay, then you can break that down into scenes. You say, all right, this shot has, 2 characters, it's in a room, and they have a telephone, and one of them is beating the other with the head with it, because apparently violence is in this thing that's in my head at the moment. And so now you know your assets that need to be made. So either you're going to make those characters in that telephone in that room, or you're going to have somebody who you're working with to make those things, and you have your plan put together for that. And so from there, you have other tools that you have to manage the project with. And so I've been doing that before with Redmine, actually, which is a cool little project management. Actually, it was originally meant as a bug reporter, but it is really, really ballooned into doing a whole bunch of it. I don't use it as much now because if I want to modify it, I have to write in Ruby, and Ruby hurts my head. So I've started using Fabricator and some other homebrewed tools for that kind of project management stuff. And anyway, you manage a project, you figure out what those parts are, you get the assets made, you get the props made, and you start putting those into a sort of a dummy scene and doing what's called layout. And you lay out where things are according to the timing from your storyboard. And this is where you can say, all right, well, I know that this character has to be here at 1 second, and it has to be over here at 3 seconds. And this other character has to be in this other position at that same timing. And then you can say, all right, well, actually that positioning doesn't work on an actual camera. Do I need to adjust the camera? Do I need to adjust the choreography on that? And how do those things tie together? You refine that step of it. And once you have your layout done, by the time you were finished working on your layout, whoever is working on the models hopefully is close to a point where those models are usable in your scene. You could start swapping assets out. That's one of the cool things when you're dealing with, especially 3D art, is there's a lot of the same sort of things you see in programming with code reuse. There's linked assets and the ability to swap things in and out, and that gets you the ability to, okay, well, I know a character is going to be here, and this works in games and animations as well. I have this character going to be here. I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to put a cube here, and that's going to be my character until I have something to swap in, something that makes a lot more sense by somebody who has more time or talent to put it together. And once that's put together, then you have the character there. The character is sculpted and modeled and textured and made to look beautiful. And of course, then rigged, which is, that's a whole nother ball of wax. Rigging is one of the more technical parts of the 3D animation pipeline. It's basically, the way I like to describe it is, have you ever played originally it was a Windows game, but they have versions of it in Linux. Minesweeper. You ever play Minesweeper?
Of course.
Yeah. So
I play Minesweeper all the time.
Do you enjoy playing Minesweeper?
Yeah.
Then you would be.
Oh yeah.
All right. So Moss would be
Although when Windows 8 came out, they actually had a version of Minesweeper that turned it into an adventure game, and you had 3 deaths rather than just the one. And I thought that was really cool, but that was the only cool thing about Windows 8.
Well, so based on that feedback, Moss would actually really very much enjoy rigging, and Leo would be about rigging. It takes a particular mindset. It's there's a lot of things dealing with dependencies. This depends on this. This depends on this to make a particular thing happen for the character. When I bend my arm, I need, or more importantly, when I place a hand somewhere, the arm has to bend in a particular way. And if you can proceduralize that, it makes everybody's life a little bit easier. So you have your rigger work with that model that's put up, and then all of that comes together to the animator, who starts actually bringing this character to life and making that stuff move and making it happen. And then from there, you spend a lot of time iterating and iterating and iterating. It's a slow, thankless art, animation is, because once you have your timing right and you actually have that character moving and everything behaving the way you want, then you actually start thinking about, okay, well, also what's the lighting what someone else focuses on? What's the lighting for the scene look like? What's the materials for everything look like? Does this fit the story that we initially wrote, or do we have to go back and restart things or change things around to make it fit what we were actually talking about? Or did we think of something more interesting that fits better because of just the natural flow of iteration? And that's from you end up rendering out, and that will take, depending on how big you're rendering and how complex the scene is. I mean, you can have a single frame of animation can take half a day to render, even on a powerful setup. But usually what you end up doing is you send that to a compute farm. And most render farms are very, very similar to the same thing you see in high-performance computing for scientific HPC applications. They have a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same infrastructure, and a lot of the same management things. And so they'll use those same tools to do that distributed computing job of doing that. And actually, one of the things that I went to a conference, and the movie Monsters Inc., done by Pixar, they actually managed their render farm with an IRC chatbot, which I thought was phenomenal. You could actually
That is cool.
if you wanted to queue a job, you tell the bot to queue, this is the job I want you to queue, throw it and get it to go. And when we started designing our own system, I remembered that from that conference, and I started playing a lot with writing a chatbot to, at the very least, query the render farm, figure out who's in the queue, who's doing what. And I haven't gotten it to the point where it's actually starting jobs and whatnot, but at least I can queue things up and clean things up when jobs are done and they leave little cruff lying about. But even when you're done rendering, you're not done yet, because you still have to do your final edit. And then this entire time, hopefully, you're also thinking about audio, because great visual is phenomenal, a great thing to have. If it sucks, then the whole thing is worthless. So then you're starting to talk about, all right, I got to mix this with audio. I should have been animating to audio the whole time, so that you have roughs that have been recorded throughout the whole thing, especially if you have a dialogue. But even then, if you're talking about, like, Looney Tunes animations were very, very music driven, right? So a lot of the timing was built around that. And so you have to make sure that your timing is set. And then, of course, you have to make sure the audio tastes. Yes, we'll say audio tastes good.
Yeah, right. It's tasting for your ears.
It's a little synesthesia, but so you can run through that, and this is where you could do that with, say, our door. I mean, you could do it with Audacity, but a lot of you end up with a much more multi-track sort of situation, and our door tends to be a little bit more of a robust solution to doing that kind of thing. And then once you have all of that mixed together, you have your final audio mix, you have your final video edit put together, you still have to do your compositing. To make sure that your color is graded properly, so that every shot, when you have one shot that looks like it's shot with blue light and the next shot after that is happening at a different time of day, you want it to either look like that, or you want it to look like it's not too jarring to the audience, depending on how you want to tell the story. So then you have a pass where you're color grading and doing that. And that can happen in Blender, but it can also happen in a lot of node editing compositing programs, like, for instance, Natron is an open source compositor that's pretty good for that. And then you, when you're done with all that, then you get to encode it, and then you get to distribute it and share it around with the world. And that's the workflow for animation. Whew.
Wow. So, wow, that's a lot.
Well,
And-
the cool, it is a lot, and keeping all of that in your head, the cool thing is that unless you're doing it by yourself, which you totally can, you don't have to keep that whole pipeline in your head, right? That most people focus on, I'm a modeler, or I'm an animator, or I'm a compositor. There are generalists, but even the generalists are they're generalists within a certain realm. You don't have a lot of people who are taking, especially animation, from soup to nuts on their own.
Yeah, the one spot that I kind of grabbed onto, I was like, Ardor, multi-track audio. Oh, I know that one.
So you obviously have a huge, like, unending well of knowledge. What was your motivation for writing books about Blender? Why go that direction?
Some of it was happenstance, and some of that was I like to share and teach anyway, and books are a way to do it. So I've always written, right? Writing is, and I like words. Obviously, I've been talking an awful lot, so I like words. I like writing them often more than actually saying them. And so I like to think I tend to be okay with using them. So, I was actually, this was quite a while ago. I was writing for Blender Nation, which is one of the largest community news blog websites for Blender that's been around for ages. And I was writing articles for them, basically covering little how-to stuff or general news stuff about what's going on with Blender development. And the editors, the writing mailing list of folks that we got an email from Wiley, the publisher that does the For Dummies series, saying, "Hey, we think that there's a market for Dummies book for Blender. Does anybody want to write it?" And we had a little bit of a conversation inside our own little group and said, "Well, it's the word dummies is associated with it, and it's this other thing. Who has time?" And basically, what it came down to was like, well, I've been associated with the word dummy at least once in my life, and I like to write. So I'll raise my hand and do it. And so I responded after making sure it was cool with everybody else. I responded to the original email, and the first response back from the acquisitions editor was like, "Great! I think that's a fantastic thing. Now write me basically a short essay that explains why you think that what we just told you about it being a good market, why you think that should be, and also have a first chapter for us."
I just throw you to the wolves, man.
Right. And so I did that, and they said, "Cool, you're small tweaks to the voice to match sort of the dummy style. Here's our style sheet. Can you get us a manuscript in 6 weeks?" And that was the first edition of Blender for Dummies. And then from there, I've been updating that, like I said, roughly every 2 years or so. I also got into writing the very massive. I co-wrote the very massive GIMP Bible a while back. It's a bit out of date now. A lot of it's still useful for the current version of GIMP, but yeah, I was involved with writing that as well.
That is really interesting. So yeah, I mean, so you probably had a hand in a lot of these books that I've probably come across in just trying to learn about stuff. That's really interesting. It's good to. I don't know. I guess the more you talk, the more I'm awestruck about all the stuff that you've been into and the things that you've done.
You kick around long enough. I mean, the community of people who use, especially who use open source software for creative stuff, has never been particularly enormous. There are a lot of us that do it, but in terms of like ratio compared to the overall creative community, we're a fairly small niche. So you kick around it long enough, you end up doing something interesting.
That's awesome. Well, Tony, you had one.
Yeah. So Blender and really 3D animation in general is not an easy thing to get on with. So it was just kind of wondering, for those that may be listening and are thinking about dipping their toe in and getting started with Blender, do you have any tips or advice for someone that's brand new coming in?
Absolutely. So I would say the first thing is thinking about what you want to do with Blender. Like Blender is like I said, a Swiss Army chainsaw. It can do just about anything. It can do all sorts of stuff. And so you have to kind of start with managing your own expectations about what you want to do with it. It may be like I have an image and I want to do some basic image processing on it, like I might do in GIMP, but I want to do it not like with a non-destructive workflow. Well, Blender's compositor gives you non-destructive image editing. So what I mean by non-destructive is I can take an image as input, route it through a number of nodes, and I have an output. But if I don't like that output, I'm not married to that. I can always reverse it and change one of those nodes on the path to do it. So finding these small projects is really the easiest way. So if your image interested is in image processing, then start playing with a compositor and say, all right, I want to. Really, it's about finding it one task and trying to do that one task. That's what's worked best for me is I need to be able to do a particular thing and I figure out the route to do that one thing. And then as I'm doing that, I sort of figure out, okay, well, I can apply this in other places. Because that's one of the nice things about Blender is that if you have an understanding for how the 3D environment works, a lot of that user interface knowledge will translate to other parts of the interface. If you're interested in like making 3D models, like for printing, for instance, I wouldn't necessarily start off with like traditional what they call box modeling or point per point where you're pulling vertices around and trying to make shapes with that. Blender's sculpting tools are phenomenal and they keep getting better. So you can do 3D sculpting in Blender. The proprietary or commercial corollary to this would be a program called ZBrush, as well as there are a number of other ones that are out there as well, but ZBrush tends to be the most popular one. But you can actually, it feels very organic. You can actually sculpt your 3D much like you would clay, and you can do organic things as well as stuff that looks more mechanical with a few add-ons for it. And so sculpting gives you sort of this this soft touch ability to get right into it and start making things in 3D that, like for instance, you can print and do that sort of thing. Now, the downside, of course, is that if you're sculpting, it's really not necessarily the most fun thing to do with a mouse or a trackball. So some sort of touch interface, touch sensitive interface, like a Wacom tablet, is really, really helpful for that.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you're going to be drawing, Blender there's some people. So the animation thing is an interesting one. Like I said, animation, just animating itself tends to be a collaborative art, especially in 3D. And so there aren't as many pre-built rigs. They have a few of them out there. You can get them on, there's the Blender Cloud and BlendSwap are two websites that have a lot of 3D assets that are pre-built that you can start playing with. And that's actually a really good place to start, because you have those meshes, you have those models and rigs, and you can start playing with them and modifying them, seeing what they look like. It's a very sort of, most of them are set up with a Creative Commons license that you can play with on your own. And then you can really, it's very much like in the open source sort of way. You can see how they're built, deconstruct them, and rebuild them to the way you like them. The other way to do it from an animation standpoint is Blender has been maturing this 2D animation tool called Grease Pencil, which is all kinds of sexy. You can draw in 3D space. Again, you want to have like a tablet, even like an XP Pen or Monoprice tablet will work. If you can get it working in Linux, it'll work fine in Blender. I tend to go with the Wacom ones because their drivers tend to be very good. And I'm still using an ancient Intuos 2 for it on my personal setup. But with that, you can actually do drawing in the 3D space, but you can animate it like a 2D animator would, where you're literally, all right, I have a bouncing ball, I draw my circle, then I go to the next frame and I draw the circle again in a different place and work your way through it. Or you can grab that circle and move it on your own. You have the ability to do both of those sort of things. And if you're familiar at all with sort of traditional animation workflow, that would be the easiest entry point to getting involved with animation in Blender, I think.
Yeah, very cool.
So we've got a list of just kind of things that that might be interesting to talk about down here, and I wanted to add one. So this one I snuck in there, and it's just a question that I've had kicking around for a little while. Blender, how is it at video editing? Because it's obviously able to output these. I've seen Big Buck Bunny, right? I mean, like, it's obviously capable of doing Pixar quality everything. But can you do video editing in it?
You can actually, and for a long time, I would argue that it was the best video editor in Linux, which might speak to the quality of the other video editors in Linux more than to the high quality. I think you
might be right.
Of Blender's video editing. The difficulty with video editing in Blender is that in order to edit video in Blender, you have to understand Blender. Its video editing interface is not something like, if you're familiar with like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut or Sony Vegas or any of those programs, Blender has its own way of handling these sort of things. In some ways it's better, some ways it's not, some ways it's just flat out different. And one of the nice things about it is that, you know, it natively will handle an image sequence just as well as it will handle a video file, which is something you don't actually see in a number of video editors. A lot of video editors like, I need to be in this kind of video format so I understand what I'm doing. And so it's good at that. I would treat Blender as a cuts only video editor, and that's what when I've used it for projects in the past. If I just needed to do straight cuts, Blender's a go-to for me on that one, because I can just cut it together and I don't have to worry about, if I'm not worried about transitions, if I'm not worried about a whole lot of other things that I want to go on with it, then the videos. Sorry?
You should plug the movie.
Which one?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So actually that's worth bringing up, because the Blender Institute, Blender Foundation, Blender Animation Studio, they're all sort of within the same space, but they're slightly different organizations. But one of the really cool things about the way they developed Blender would start, I guess it's worth a little history lesson. So Blender wasn't always open source. Blender started as an in-house tool for a Dutch production company called Neo Geo. No relation to the SNK video game producer, but they're just a production company in the Netherlands, and they wrote their own animation tool called Blender, and people started at that point sharing it around, and people started liking it, and so they actually spun that off into a new business called Not a Number and started developing Blender and growing it, and they had a big fanfare, and they were, at that time, Maya was one of the biggest 3D modeling and animation suites, and that was selling for like, I don't know, it's like $20,000, and they were trying to sell Blender for like $100. And they were getting a lot of recognition and going very well. But this also happened right around the as they were starting to get traction. That's right when the whole dot bomb fiasco happened just before the 2000s, and all the investment money sort of just shriveled up and went away, and Not a Number went out of business. But by that point in time, there were enough people who were using Blender and really liked it that Ton Rosendahl, who's the original developer of Blender, he went to the holding company that had the IP for Blender and said, look, if we can raise 100,000 euro, can we open source Blender, put it under a GPL license, and go from there? And they said, yeah, sure. And the expectation was that it would take 1 to 2 years to do that. And the Blender community raised that money in 7 weeks. And this was before 2000, so 100,000 euro. So Blender counts as one of the first liberated open source projects. Like, it's one of the first projects that was actually liberated by its community to become open source. And well, as they started developing it more and more, because it was an in-house tool, they already understood the value of having artists and developers in the same place. So if an artist has a problem, they can turn over and look at the developer and say, this don't work. Probably not with that accent, but they'll look over and say, this is not functioning the way I want it to be. This is not behaving how I like it. I would prefer to do this, or I need this feature, or those sorts of things, because production demands call for that kind of stuff. And so what they did is they started doing these open movie projects, and they would basically select a handful of artists from around the world, actually, to come to Amsterdam to work on these movies and produce them for the community. And they would also, when they would do the movie all in open source software, and when they finished the movie, all of the assets, all of the 3D models, all of the textures, everything that they used to produce the film was released under a Creative Commons license as well. So that anybody who is learning this stuff, who wants to know how to do animation production and these sorts of things, can actually learn by looking at how these large projects are structured and how they work. And you learn a lot about rigging and the tools that are put together. And of course, Blender gets these giant leaps in development because there are artists sitting there saying, I need this out of the tool and it's not doing it for me. Make it happen. And because of that, that's where Blender got its compositor out of that. Blender's video editor has gotten refinement over the years out of that. And because they've done not just animated films, they did a visual effects film called Tears of Steel, which you can actually go and see and do that sort of stuff. And they've done 2D styled animation, and they did one bout where they did a video game, because Blender, for a stretch there up until the most recent release, had an integrated game engine as well, because Swiss Army Chainsaw. And so yeah, so that's where a lot of those tools have become really robust for that, is because they've been using them to make productions and finding out where artists actually run into trouble with that.
And that's where you want a development team to be, right? I mean, just not necessarily at the beck and call, but listening to the people that use their software and making their lives easier every single day.
Absolutely. Well, and what's one of the other fun, like, there's the Blender developer community, I would say the majority of Blender developers started as artists that were using Blender to do a thing, and it wasn't doing something they wanted, so they dug into the code and started hacking at it to get it to behave the way they wanted. So, like, there are a few PhD level developers working on Blender, but I would say the vast majority of the development team are actually creatives and artists who are scratching their own itches.
Man, that's awesome. So how do you take Blender and with all of its complexity, and I mean we've been talking about it for a little while. How do you take Blender and show it to somebody to convince more artists and creatives to get involved in, if nothing else, just using Blender?
Well, I mean, the portfolios and the just showing the work that people make with it is probably the easiest thing, right? You just go to, for instance, blenderartist.org, which is probably the largest Blender user community that's out there, at least on the English-speaking side of things. Little disclaimer, I'm a moderator there, but you go there, you look at the art gallery there, and you just say, look, this is the sort of stuff that Blender artists are making. This is the sort of stuff that you can make with Blender alone, or as Blender as part of the pipeline, because you don't have to use Blender for the whole thing if you want. If you just need it for that one tool, it's fine. There's a guy now, he's on Twitter as OpenVFX, Sean Kennedy. He used to work for Rhythm and Hues, and he was doing a lot of their compositing work, but every now and again he would need a shot here and there that was that needed some 3D assets or whatever, and he didn't, from a production pipeline standpoint, he didn't need to throw it over to the 3D animation team. He just needed some birds flapping around, or a flag with its flapping in the wind or whatever. And so he would sort of quietly make that, and Blender composite it in with the rest of the scene. And so Blender's been used in a lot of movies and nobody even knows it, which is really kind of cool. And sort of sharing those kinds of stories is really beneficial. But then there's also just the open source story, right? There's the ability not to have vendor lock-in with stuff like Autodesk doing subscription-only systems where, all right, so I have a 3D model and it only opens up in 3D Studio Max or Maya, and now my subscription ended and I don't have access to those programs, and now I don't have access to my work. That's, for me, that's a pretty big selling point of just open source in general.
Absolutely. Yeah, I took a look at, you said blenderartist.org. I took a look at their top 10 list, and my God, it's fantastic. Some of the art that's there, it's mind blowing. Some of that stuff looks real.
Yeah, there's some really phenomenal work, and some of that is with some other tools used. But actually, if you look on the header right now, there's something called the Weekend Challenge winner. That's one of the, I think of that as the one of the sort of like the great secrets of that forum is that they have a challenge every weekend where they have a prompt, and by the end of the weekend you have to have an image, and the community that participates votes on the one they like the most, and that one shows up in the top row too. And there's some work that you're like, this was done in a weekend, and it's really exciting to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I mean, if you're already a creative, I think it's very easy to convince someone, hey, come use Blender, look at what everybody has already done. Crazy.
You would think so. But it's also one of those things, people, not just in computer graphics or that sort of thing, people get really attached to their tools. They get attached to particular workflows. And so there is a little bit of headwinds, I'll say, in trying to get somebody who already knows how to do something in one thing to, all right, you have to learn a different way of doing it. Now, there's an argument from a personal development standpoint, you should stay nimble anyway, right? You should be able to adapt to different things because that's what's going to be required of you as a creative anyway. But again, when somebody understands how to use a particular tool, scroll saw or carving knife or drill press, if they're presented with another tool that does something similar but in a different way, like using a lathe as a drill press, for instance, they tend to have this really visceral response that is hard to rationalize. So it has been a little bit of a challenge trying to get people who are already. It's actually easier to get people who don't know anything to start using tools like Blender because they don't have to unlearn the things that they've already learned.
Exactly. Yeah. Good points. So as far as 3D printing goes, Blender's fairly good at that too, right?
It is. I mean, this is where I caveat things a little bit. Blender is at its core a vertex and polygon modeler. It is not a solid modeling system. It's not, you're not going to necessarily have super high CAD level precision when you're using Blender, because I mean, from a technology standpoint, they're still using 32-bit floats for most of everything that they're doing. So just getting that range of precision is very tough. Blender's not necessarily ever going to be a full-on CAD tool like FreeCAD or any of the other ones that are out there that can do that. But if you need to do 3D modeling or for rapid prototyping, like for 3D printing, then Blender's phenomenal. I have used it for so many different things for that, and there's a few add-ons that are worth trying to track down, that depending on what you're trying to do, if you're trying to do something that's more sort of hard body modeling and mechanical, there's some add-ons that are really useful for that. But you do what you want. You have tools to check to make sure that the mesh is watertight, is non-manifold, or I always get manifold and non-manifold backwards. It always bites me because I always say the one with confidence and I get it backwards. But the one that is bad, it makes sure that it marks the stuff that is basically not making it watertight, or a vertex that's connected to an edge that's not making a face or anything like that. You can detect those, clean up your meshes from that if you have a scan or a sculpt that you made, and then you export that as an STL file, pull that into your slicer, and you're off to the races.
That's fantastic. So that I think that was one of the big things that I had, because I mean I want to get into we were just talking about it earlier, getting a 3D printer. So and if I need to make those one-off little solutions, this could be the way. So
Now, I will say that I did find Blender to be very power user and somewhat difficult to use for generating 3D models, but I'm also not very good at making 3D models. So
it's all about that practice.
But then, I've watched a couple of videos from Ben Heck, and I think he's using Fusion 360 as opposed to Blender. But then you just see the designs that he's making and the way he's just burning through it real quick and making these very intricate designs. And it's like, I don't know if I'll ever get to that point.
And so some of it can be proceduralized. There's a really cool add-on by a developer called Alessandro. Oh, I lost his last name. I'll have to look it up. I'll find it. But he has an add-on called Tissue, which gets you. He's actually using it with 3D printing for prosthetics and for like attractive braces for if somebody breaks an arm or those sort of things, or just the fashion industry. And so you have this ability, you have a very simple looking mesh, and you say, okay, I have this ball, and I have this other small thing that I've modeled that I want to repeat on every single face on that mesh. And then all of a sudden you've got a basket, right? So there's a lot of ability to proceduralize what you want to do depending on what's coming out. And that's actually how I did my the sponge holder I was telling you about. I actually used Tissue as the basis for it.
That is cool.
Well, Jason, I could seriously listen to you talk about Blender all day long. So, but we do got to wind this up eventually. Now, I got I want to let you nerd out a little bit about version control, but after that, I've got a couple of questions from YouTube chat, if that's all right.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so nerding out about version control. So you had noted that programmers use it all the time. I mean, I think you see it with GitHub and everything else, but you mentioned that creatives should use it. Why?
Well, so if you're a creative making even the graphic design side of things, and actually you see this even with people who are just writing. Like, I have a document, I keep writing on the document, and I want to have some kind of save state. If you're thinking about it from a video game standpoint, I have a save state. I know if I come back to here, this is my safe spot, and I can experiment from there. And what most creatives that don't know anything about version control do is they'll put a 1 at the end of the file, or they'll put a timestamp at the end of the file, or they'll say version 1 or or eventually they'll get to it where it's like version 1 final. I promise this time it's true final dot.
I do that with my files, man.
Exactly. And I was guilty of doing that as well, and you know, my work folders, my work directories ended up being these monstrous directories full of like save states that I promised myself at some point I was going to go back to either clean up or to, you know, rework from there. And it gets messy and it's hard to, and then you're relying on the file name itself to tell you what exactly was involved with that particular change. And it gets really unwieldy, especially when you start working on large collaborative projects like animations. So I started adopting version control pretty early on in what I was doing for animation, and it sort of bled over into everything else. And yeah, I mean, I started with Subversion, which is, I don't think anybody except for like maybe some WordPress developers are using it. And actually, Subversion still has a lot going for it. And the biggest downside to it is that it's centralized. The upside is that it's great for binary diffs, which most art programs, most creative programs, are going to be binary in nature. So you want to save space by having binary diffs with it. But because it's centralized,
it is still very widely used in the business world.
Right. And because having a centralized server in the business world, that's part of the operating cost, right? You're going to have that, and it's nice to have that home base. If you're working on your own, or you're working in a more ad hoc nature, then that's trying to get Subversion to work on the same machine that you're working on is it's not particularly fun. It's not as fast as just, you know, firing up a single program or running a single command line command to do what you want. And so I started looking around. I bounced through a whole bunch of different version control systems, from Bazaar to Git to Mercurial to even Fossil, which is written by the guy that wrote SQLite, which Fossil is interesting if you ever get a chance to play with it. But I ended up using Mercurial, partially at the time because I was collaborating with some artists that were using Blender and other programs on Windows, and Git's Windows tools were not at that time very robust, especially from when you want to have like a proper graphical user interface for it. Tortoise HG is a great graphical interface for Mercurial and has been around for ages. And so it's also handy that Mercurial handles binary diffing slightly better than Git does. And so that's when I started using Mercurial for those sort of things, specifically so I could have notes on my changes, so I could collaborate with other people, and so I don't have a whole folder littered with final plus, I believe me, this time it's true, files. And then I can also, because it's distributed, I can easily put that, you know, I can take my entire work project and move it from my desktop to a laptop back to someplace else and never miss a beat, because I'm always keeping a version of it, and my data integrity is good. So it's one of those things I evangelize to creatives, like the beauty of version control, because I believe in it so much, and it has saved my tail so many times.
I can definitely believe that. I mean, if you were to peruse my audio edits, you would see exactly what you're talking about over and over and over again. So this is something I'll definitely look into. I really want to. I mean, it makes your workflow better, and I think, you know, doing that even in any small way, just, you know, makes your life better a little bit.
And it facilitates experimentation. That's my favorite part about it, is that I have a place that I know is sort of, if I come back to here, I at least know where I'm going, and I know where I was. And so from here on out, for the next however long, I can play and experiment. I have no worry that I'm going to destroy what I was working on, because I have a save state. I have a place that I can always go back to.
Right. And my final plus for real this time one is it works, but I can certainly see making that better. So we had a couple of questions in the YouTube chat, and I wanted to just get your thoughts on some of these. I'm not sure if you're involved in or if you even know the answer, but we'll just try it out and see what happens. So Yusuf asks, the animation playback in viewport in Blender is slow. What is your workaround to view it in real time?
Yeah, the viewport. So Blender's entire interface is written in OpenGL. Like, even the buttons and the widgets and the entire thing is written in OpenGL, which makes it very portable, but also makes it very video card dependent. And they just updated the render engine to EV, which is their real-time renderer. And because they upgraded some of those things, basically they're running into some struggles with performance, especially for animation playback. That was one of the targets for the 2.9 series, which is after that they're working on now that the LTS is out. And really, if you're trying to get animation playback to work well, you go back to using the same sort of methodology that we used sort of earlier on. Having a proxy model that's a lot of work to do, but in a larger production, it's worth doing. So what I mean by that is if you have this very detailed character with flowing hair and physics that makes their clothes move and very detailed mesh that has, muscles bulging and veins and stuff happening like that, every bit of that is computationally intensive. So if you can replace that with, you have a rig, and for every bone in that rig, you just put a cylinder, a very simple mesh of some sort, or a cube, even better, an extended cube. That's a lot less geometry for Blender to move around. And if you're working on animation, your care is really the poses and the timing, which you don't need all the detail for. You should have good, strong silhouettes anyway. So that's the reason why having a low poly proxy is a good idea for a character. And that's one of the best ways, but it's also, there's a lot of overhead because now you have your low poly version and your high poly version that you have to swap out based on what you're doing. The other way is just to do things that where you're isolating it. So take everything else in the scene and hide it. The slash key on the numpad, which if you have something selected, you isolate that one object. So if you have a character and all you're worried about is animating that one character and maybe the floor that they're standing on, select those two things and hit slash on the numpad. Everything else hides and you're only focusing on that. And so then Blender only has to draw those things to the screen. Also turning down your visual effects, right? So if you're looking at your animation in the same way that you're looking at your shading level, so having full textures and those sort of things, it's going to run slower than if you're looking at it in solid mode. Those are sort of the sort of basic low-level things to look at. Then from there, it really depends more. Sometimes it gets a little bit scene specific. So if you have like particles running on it, or you have a bunch of other sort of additional features, that gets more scene dependent on what kind of optimizations you can turn on. Oh, I will say one more. If you're using subdivision surfaces, so just to bring anybody who's not familiar with Blender and subdivision surface modeling, you can actually get more geometry on a mesh by applying a modifier to it called a subdivision surface modifier, which basically smoothly adds more vertices to the geometry so it doesn't look so square and blocky, basically. But again, you're adding more geometry to the scene. So if you want to, you can either go to the modifier and turn that down, or there is, I have to remember exactly where it is on the interface, there is a simplify tab where globally across the entire scene, you can just turn off all the subdivision surface modifiers for every object in your scene, and that should also help it run faster.
Man, that's in depth. I like it. He had another follow-up, and so just real quick, what's the benefit of EV? I saw that was something that was coming out. You had mentioned 2.9.
Yeah, so EV was introduced in 2.8. EV is a replacement for the 3D viewport renderer. It's a real-time renderer. So basically, it's a video game renderer built into Blender, used for asset creation, where you can get high detail textures and stuff that you and proper lighting, dynamic lighting in your scene as you're working on it, so you can actually see what it's going to look like at final render more easily. Because Blender's primary renderer is Cycles, which is a ray trace renderer. And if you ever play with ray trace renderers, they often take very long. Cycles is GPU accelerated, but even with GPU acceleration, there's a difference between, this frame took, 30 seconds to a minute to render versus I can render 30 of these frames in a second with a real-time renderer is what you get with EV. And so depending on the project, I will switch renders around depending on how quickly I have to deliver, or more importantly, how realistic the lighting has to be.
Wow, fantastic. Well, thank you. Wow. This has been a conversation, and like I said before, I mean, I could just sit here and listen to you even more. So we're gonna have to have you come back on and do some kind of get us all started on Blender or something like that. This has been a real treat. So
Sure,
thank
I'd
you.
love to. That'd be great.
All right. Well, so that'll wrap this section up. Let's head down to Vibrations from the Ether and hit a little feedback. So in this section, we got we got a lot of feedback actually this go around. So we'll go through it pretty quickly because we got ourselves another behemoth of a show. So Enrique Pisana says, listening to episode 339, I like the timestamps I see in my podcast player. So this is something that we have added over the past couple of episodes. I put them in the live stream after the fact, and I put them in your podcast catcher when you download the show. So apparently some of the podcast catchers take that and you can click on them. That's cool. That's really cool. So anyway, so he goes on. Y'all keep it to an hour, which is nice. I got finished listening to Moss and the Wanderings, then I clicked the timestamp to forward me to news. I like having the choice to move forward to hearing the things I am interested in. And he mentions that he
So
finished the.
what he's saying
Go ahead.
there is he skips Joe.
Maybe.
No, that's what it's saying there.
Oh
he,
man.
He listened to Moss and the Wanderings, and then he skips Joe.
So we'll put you first. And that way he's got to listen to you.
That works for me.
Then he goes on to say he finished the first episode of Linux User Space, the other show that the other show that I'm on, and he says he enjoyed everyone on the show. However, I got the Player of the Game award, so thank you very much for that, Enrique. And let me see. Oh yeah, so he mentions that we, as a response to another to I guess the feedback that we had on the previous show where it was split it up into even smaller parts, like 30-minute parts. He says, you all edit the show however you want. It's a good compromise to include timestamps. People can choose what section they want to hear. Before the timestamps, I would fast forward to the sections I was not interested in. This is a show you provide to us at no cost. You all do whatever you like, and it's fun. I think that's what we did with the timestamps. It's kind of a bit of a compromise between adding more work and chopping it up and rendering out a bunch of different new versions of sections of the show, and just allowing you to know where stuff starts and stops so you can get to what you want. So thanks very much for that feedback. I appreciate it, and it just makes me feel good about what we're doing. So thank you. So Jack mentions, on the few occasions I use VisiData, I always wish I'd had this in my work days before I retired. What a wonderful program it is. I expect you to know this already. It's so good that everybody must already know about it. But Jack, let me tell you, I had no idea this thing existed. So thank you for writing in.
VisiData? What's VisiData?
Yeah. So it's basically. So actually, he steals it. So let me just read you what he wrote. They said he pinched a bit of text from the excellent tutorial. VisiData is a free open source tool that lets you quickly open, explore, summarize, and analyze data sets in your computer's terminal. VisiData works with CSV files, Excel spreadsheets, SQL database, and many other data sources. So basically, it sounds like to me, if you got a bunch of data and you are a terminal hawk, this is exactly what you want. Check it out. You're able to manipulate the data within and export in all kinds of different ways. And he ends with, it's a great tool for looking at data, converting data, getting a quick overview of what is in a file. So it's fantastic. It just looks really cool. And like I said, if you're someone that likes to live in the terminal, this is exactly what you want if you're looking at a bunch of those different types of files. So I'm right back to him. I'll definitely check it out, and I'll make sure the software tutorial ends up in the show. So in the show notes, we have JS Vine's GitHub. So go check that out if you want to see a little bit more about VisiData. He writes it again and says he heard mintCast about ButterFS today. It reminded me of an episode of Joe Ressington's 2.5 admins. Is that 2.5 admins or 2.5 admins? I guess it's 2.5 admins. I don't know.
They say it both ways. In fact, I've noticed Alan mentioning it as 2.05 admins.
So it's so tiny. Oh man. So he says that about the 16 and 3/4 mark, there's discussion about ZFS and ButterFS, and seemed that ButterFS can have problems in RAID configuration. So it's worth a listen if you're interested in that. And so I mentioned to him, I said, thanks for the heads up. I go on a little tangent about not using RAID myself in that particular episode because of the cost and replacement headache involved. But this is a great insight for those that are considering ButterFS and RAID. I'll throw this one in the feedback. The next up is Cody. So we had an email last time from Brad Alexander who was talking about wanting to play games on BSD. Well, that is probably not the easiest thing in the world to do, but Cody, turns out, is involved in wait a minute. I had it. What's the name of that project? I'm going to cut this out in the final edit. Homura. Oh my God. Yeah. So Homura. So Cody's actually one of the main developers on Homura. I think there's 5, and Cody has probably put out about 99% of that code. So anyway, he writes in and says he believes it was Brad Alexander who mentioned playing Homeworld Remastered Collection via Proton. The issue he'll run into is the launcher, as of yet, technically displays, but is non-functional still. The community has come together and made a script to launch any of the included games, which is here. And he links to the Proton launcher, HWRC Proton launcher. The game itself works fine, though. Also, recent versions of Steam no longer require Proton to be enabled for everything. A user can go into the game properties, select force the use of a specific Steam Play compatibility tool, select the preferred tool, in this case, the preferred version of Proton, without enabling it for everything, regardless of whether it works. That way, a user can then use specific versions of Proton for specific games. Hope this is some help to Brad. Now, okay, I totally remembered. It is not Cody that is the developer on that. We're going to talk about him, who is, I believe, Alexander. Also Alexander, a little further down. So, sorry about that, Alexander. I will get it right here in just a sec. So anyway, so I write to Cody. I say, I'll make sure to read this on the show. And Brad, if you're listening, hope that helps. Henrik writes into the site, you talked today about how to submit the episodes, if in 2 parts as today or possibly divided in more parts. For me, I think I actually prefer the full episode in 1. I listen to the whole show, but when I do, I pause. I pause the episode several times, not at any natural break from show point of view, but when it's natural from mine. I will keep on listening whatever you do with the episode management. Thanks, Henrik. Okay, so I got it wrong earlier. Alexander, I'm sorry. Here is the real scoop. Alexander writes in and said, I just wanted to thank you for the small mention of my project for FreeBSD, Homura. So when I was reading Cody's thing, I was like, why can I not find the name of this project? And it turned out that it wasn't Cody's project at all. That's why I couldn't find the name of it. That's why I stumbled over Homura. Anyway, Alexander is the lead dev of Homura. And yeah, I respond, happy to have spread a little love your way. Looks like you're doing great work for the BSDs. We all deserve a little gaming. By the way, congratulations on the release of 5.0 last month. I think as of this recording, Homura had its release 27 days ago to 5.0. So congrats again, Alexander. Now, I don't know about you, but the John Wallace saga has to continue. It just has to. But I've got some slightly disconcerting news. So John Wallace writes in, he says, hi, Leo. I'm going to concentrate on reviewing and testing the startup processes before sending my next Linus-related query. The attached photo illustrates the error messages that I encounter between entering the hard disk encryption password and entering my user account password. I would appreciate it if you could advise, please. So, and I closed it. I totally had it open. So one sec. Let me pull up this email. Do you guys get this in your email? It was the one from John Wallace. The reason I'm saying that is because it's got, okay, I'll forward it to you guys. Let me see. Of course. Why did I have to close that tab? I think I had about like 8 Blender tabs open at the same time. And I think this one was just collateral damage when I was getting rid of just about everything. Okay, so I'm going to forward this email to you guys real quick. So if you could get your email popped open, can take a look at this. I wanted you to see it. I think, Joe, maybe you might have some insight on on what the heck is going on here. Well, actually, I can read it, and that might help, and then I'll get it forwarded on to you. So, basically says no caching mode page found, and then come on. I'll stick it in our Discord. And this image was obviously taken from a phone, so it's like 4,000 by 4,000 pixels. It's so huge. Discord might not even let me put it in here. I will obviously cut all this bit out of the final show. Yep. Oh my god, the file's too big. All right, so I will just forward it. Not let me do it. The image is taking it way off the screen. There we go. Oh, you're TW. Okay, I'm gonna send this real quick. Hopefully, you guys can get your eyeballs on it real fast, and then we can see this. All right, so it says he gets about 6 different lines. It just drops into a black screen with text, obviously like TTY1 or whatever, and it says ACPI BIOS error. We might have to get him to send another image because some of this is can't read it exactly. AE not found, aborting method. If you guys can poke in your email real quick, I think it should be there. Maybe you can see it.
Yeah, there's a bit of a screen glare, I guess.
Yeah. I've seen error messages like this a lot when I ended up doing like making changes to my system and it just couldn't boot anymore. But it might be that it can't mount the encrypted hard or partition.
Right, or the BIOS isn't set up for it right now.
Ooh, okay.
Because it's a BIOS error, so I don't know. The first thing I would try is a BIOS update from a live disk.
Okay, cool. So we'll hang on to that, and then I'll see if I can't get John to send us in another image or a I guess you really can't copy paste anything in a situation like that. Anyway, so I'll talk to John a little bit more about that. But anyway, he continues on. I've recruited a new listener for the podcast, Spike, not his real name, the nickname he is commonly known by, who is the fiance of my wife's cousin. He had the following to say in a text message. Your very own saga continues. I'm going to listen in. Thanks for turning me on to mintCast, a better crowd than average. Ooh, that could be totally be our new tagline.
With a smiley face.
Exactly. Anyway, he says, look forward to hearing from you. Thanks and kind regards.
That'll be the show title this time.
Oh, a better crowd than average? I like it. Okay. I'm down for that. All right. So that will do it for our feedback. We'll head on down to check this out. So in this section, Jason, you had a little bit of something to share with us. What's this?
I mentioned it earlier on, but blenderartist.org. I'm a moderator there, but if you're interested in working in Blender and you really want to get help from the community or just see really cool art, that's probably one of the best places to go check out if you wanted to get started with Blender. So I would. It's a pleasant and welcoming atmosphere. A lot of good support there, and a lot of people there who are even more knowledgeable about Blender than I am, especially when it comes to like very specific things.
Man, that's got to be hard to do. All right, Tony Hughes, what do you got?
I've got a couple of things this time, and the first one is a YouTube video from Explaining Computers, and a few days ago he released a video of him testing out Mint 20, and the title of the video is Linux Mint 20, my top Linux distro. So go check that out. Yeah, it's a good little video actually. And then the second one is called Color Maximate 2. It's a kit, and basically it's a little kit that emulates early 1980s PCs with BASIC, and you can run all sorts of basic coding on it and stuff like that. But it's a little bit more than that, because it also has a 40-pin GPIO shield on it that you can hook up to Raspberry Pi and things like that. So go check that out and have a look at it if you're interested in old computing things and you want to use a computer for emulating old stuff. So that's my check this out this time.
I gotta admit, when I was looking at that link, I read it as color Marmite, and I was like, they make it in something other than brown?
We likes a bit of Marmite over here.
I know. I can't. I've had Vegemite, the Australian version. I can't do it. It's.
Funnily enough, I don't like Vegemite.
So they're different.
Oh, Vegemite's got a different texture, and I just can't get on with it.
Okay, all right. So maybe I'll have to give Marmite a shot.
Talk to Rocco first. He might put you on.
Okay. Moss, what do you got?
Well, all I got is Leo keeps bugging us every time that we release a new episode to go over to Reddit and upvote it. And since I don't use Reddit, I thought I'd get all of our listeners to try and go in and hit our Reddit and upvote our shows.
Well, that's more of an internal thing because I don't want to, like beg for upvotes or anything like that. Because you guys are
I'm
on the show.
begging for you.
No, you're obligated to go click the upvote, man. You're on the show.
I'm not obligated to use Reddit. That's my problem. So I'm getting
That's
someone
true,
to help
that's
me
true.
out.
Well, it would be much appreciated if you throw us an upvote over there. I would definitely appreciate it. I think we post both to mintCast and Linux Mint. So if you happen to be there, yeah, I'd appreciate it. Joe, what about you?
Well, I've included a YouTube video from DIY Perks. I really like this guy's videos. My only issue with him is that he has some really expensive tools, but he does a really good job with most of this. And this is converting a smartphone to a laptop. And it's basically a DIY lap dock for USB-C type phones. And he makes it really simple and goes through all the steps and shows you how to just get it done. And high quality products he makes in the end.
Fantastic. I will actually check that out. That's cool. Well, that'll do it for Check This Out. Our own one and only announcement is our next episode will be August 9th, 2020 at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern U.S. Time, 7 p.m. UTC, 8 p.m. British Summer Time. Eventually we're just going to have all the time zones here. We'll just put them in a bullet point list, man. We'll just hit them all.
Yeah, we need to add the New Delhi time.
Right? The half one. That one's crazy. I didn't know you did halves. That was a thing. All right. Well, I want to give everybody a chance to throw out the stuff that they're working on, the stuff that they're involved in. So, Jason, where can people find you if they wanna learn more about Blender, if they want to see the things that you're involved in?
Home base for me is monsterjavaguns.com. Yeah, Monster Java Guns is an anagram for my name. It's just easier to spell for most people. There's also the Open Source Creative podcast. That's opensourcecreative.org. Blender for Dummy stuff, you can go to blenderbasics.com. That has all the ways to start. There's some basic information there as well as how to get the book. And in terms of social media, basically look for Monster Java Guns, and that will be me.
Nice. I actually wanted to spend some time talking about open source creative, but we ran so long that I couldn't do it. So if we could ever get you back on the show again, I want to talk a lot more about your podcast.
Sure.
All right, Joe, what about you?
Oh, I'm on a couple other shows. You can catch me on the Linux Link Tech Show or the Linux Lugcast. You can find me on MeWe, or you can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org.
Bo's not here today, but you can find him at the undercastnetwork.com. Moss, what about you?
Well, if I could find my microphone switch, you can find me at my new website. It's Moss. I'm at Triad Bardic College, Peaceful Hippo, Distro Hoppers Digest, MeWe. I've got music on Bandcamp, my YouTube channel, Robert Warren's YouTube channel, Moss at mintcast.org, Distro Hoppers Digest at gmail.com, and I have a sponsors.
Now, if I could find my button. Tony Hughes, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Hacker Public Radio. I'm host ID 338. As I told you before, I've just started writing a series of articles for Full Circle magazine. First one comes out in a few days. I do an occasional blog, tony-hughes.blogspot.com. On Twitter, TonyH1212. And you can get me at distrohoppersdigest@gmail.com and th at mintcast.org.
And Tony Watts.
Contact TW at mintcast.org. And not technical, but music related stuff, you can find Ex-Savages, the band, everywhere. And my Facebook page for my solo stuff is facebook.com/Tony Watts Music.
Nice. And we're going to twist his arm. He's got to come back. Josh at mintcast.org, Josh at edublocks.org, edublocks.org, and at all_about_code on Twitter. As for me, leochavez.org and at leochavez on Twitter, linuxuserspace.show, and you can get your 5-minute news digest at Full Circle Weekly News. But before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. First up, Jason, for hanging out with us for the long haul. It was a long show. Thank you again. And teaching us everything we need to know to get started with Blender.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for letting me come and play.
Absolutely. Anytime. You just say the word, you come right back on. Josh, for all his work on the website. Bytemark Hosting for hosting mintcast.org and our Mumble server. Archive.org for hosting our audio files. HPR for our backup Mumble server. Hobstar for our logo. And the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about every fortnight.
Thanks,
Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Hey, I'm sure I can edit that in. Hey, maybe I'll just put that at the very, very end. But that'll do it. And those that are still listening on the live stream, thank you so very much for hanging out with us for 3 hours.
Woo!
And yeah, and if you're listening not today, but sometime in the future, you time traveler, yeah, man, 3 hours. This is wow. That's a long
Hasn't
show.
been 3 hours yet.
We're climbing up to it, man. Technically, we pressed the live stream, so the live stream will be about 3 hours because we hit that button about 10 minutes prior to really doing much. But thank y'all for hanging out with us for so long. Thank you.
Okay, turning off my Audacity. Export that sucker.
Yeah. Yusef says, best 3 hours on Sunday. Man, you could be doing so many things on a Sunday, and you hang out with us, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, awesome.
Bill Bryant, hey, happy Linux Sunday.
When you export these to FLAC, level 5, 16-bit?
No. Level
no?
8, 24.
Level 8, 24.
We want to
Perfect.
give that hard drive a workout, I think.
Fantastic.
All the best settings on all the things. Go. Yeah.
You have any file name convention that you use?
Episode 340, or
Dash your name.
mintCast, yeah, and then your initial.
Honestly, it doesn't matter how you name it. We'll figure it out. Nobody else sounds like Jason, so.
For better or for worse.
Who's editing what this time, Leo?
Ooh.
Oh, hey, my mic was open. I thought I had it muted. I'm like, where's the mute button? And then, yeah, I can take the front again if you want. That's fine with me. I'm telling you, I've gotten to the point now where I got my compression settings down, where I don't have to go through and like amplify. Like once I figured this out, I was able to really seriously shave off about 30 minutes of editing time. And I mean, the worst that I have to do now is smack a limiter. Like sometimes the audio, like my audio will be a little louder than your audio, Tony, or something like that. And I'll just use the limiter to bring you up 2 dB or bring me down 2 dB or something like that. Seriously, the whole initial setup is, oh, wow. It's just crazy how easy it is now once I got that figured out. Lots of practice as well, but still, that helps. But yeah, I'll take the front half if that's all right with you.
File exported and uploading.
Oh, whoa. I totally typed in episode 400. We're not there yet. How did I? Oh, wow. I don't know how I ended up with that. So we do like, how many do we do? We do like 21 or 22 a year. That would be 5 years from now. No. That'd be like 3 years from now. Episode 400. Wow. Y'all going to be around for that long?
Probably.
3, 4 more years?
26 episodes, Leo. 26. There are
26. All right.
52 weeks in a year. We do every other. So far, we haven't skipped any.
Yeah, we haven't. And, like early on, I was really worried about that. I was like, so are there going to be situations where, and it just has turned out that way too many of us come on to every single show.
Yeah. I'm glad I can just pop on occasionally, as life permits. Otherwise, I don't know how that would work. But yeah.
Well, we're always happy to have you.
Yeah, seriously. Tony, I really do enjoy having you. Yeah.
I feel so uninteresting.
Tony just
What?
dropped out of Mumble. Hey, I have an issue, Leo.
That guy called me uninteresting.
What?
Oh, the guy in the
Who?
feedback, he called me uninteresting.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you
Yay!
Yay! I disappeared
mine's
for
up.
some reason.
now. Yeah,
Yeah, I was talking to you, and I was like, okay, well, he doesn't want to talk to me. That's fine.
Leo, I've got a Mumble issue.
Uh-huh.
When I have my mic on, or when I'm in Mumble, it says I'm on all the time, even when I mute my mic. It didn't do that with the old microphone.
I wonder if that's not, you have it like set to continuous or something, because that's weird. I saw that today too, but I didn't hear anything. So you're fine.
Yeah.
But it looks weird. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Check on how you got it, as far as like amplitude, continuous, whatever. That may be the deal.
Well, I would have to change resolution to do that. It's like
Well, I mean, just whenever. We could do it on Saturday if you want.
Okay. Well, anyhow, I will get the show notes edited. These will be fun to edit. I got all the strike through removed already, but
Leo,
Yeah.
yeah. When you were talking about compression a couple of minutes ago, what's your compression settings?
I think I've uploaded them into our doc. So they
Oh,
may
you
be
have,
in
have
there.
you? Right. I'll have a look at that shortly.
All right, so my audio file is substantially larger than the other two that have been put up there. So if I need to re-encode that, just let me know. But
Yep.
No, it's probably because you were
the more
doing-
you talk, the larger your file is.
Yeah.
oh,
So
stupid,
because you were
stupid
the
verbosity.
big central hour block,
No, wait, man. You carried the
yours
whole
will be
show.
quite large.
It's fantastic.
Oh, cool. Well, I actually have to dip out. It's actually my mother's birthday, and I should probably show up and make
Oh, wow.
myself visible.
Well, thank you
So-
so
Tell her
much
we said
again.
happy birthday.
Yeah.
we'll do
thank
that.
you.
From
Yeah.
the whole show. Not that she knows who we are or anything like that, but there's a whole show that's going to wish her a happy birthday today.
Fantastic.
Yay. Happy birthday. What's your mum's name?
Diane.
Diane. Happy
Yeah.
birthday, Diane.
Indeed.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you guys for letting me come and play. It was a
Thanks
ton of
for
fun.
coming.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks for
Definitely.
hanging out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Am I going to see you back on Tilts?
I haven't been on. I've never been on Tilts, but I have
Well,
been
not
on
Tilts,
Linux Lugcast.
Linux Lugcast, I mean.
Yeah, I think I'll be. I don't think it's this Friday. It's the next Friday because this Friday's still in July, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'll probably still pop in. Oh. But cool. Yeah, thanks a lot. I will talk to you all some other time. When does this get pushed out, or is it already out?
Monday.
Monday or
Well,
Tuesday.
the live stream is already available, but
Right.
Monday will be the official show. Or I'm sorry. Tuesday night is usually when I push out the actual show. But the edits that both Tony and I will do will go into this folder. So keep your eye on it. And Monday night.
And the Linux Innards comes out in the second half of the show following Tuesday.
Right on.
So on Monday night, I'll have the first edit done, and you can listen to it right then. And in about 24 hours later, it'll get pushed out. So if there's anything that you need me to change or something like that in the final cut, just let me know.
Cool.
And-
Yeah, if you need me to obviously I want to share this out for other people to do so.
Yep.
Just let me know when and where I can share links and things.
Cool. I will tweet at you when it's officially released. You said your Monster Java Guns, Java Monster Guns. Okay,
That's
cool.
me.
And I'll tweet at you when it all comes out. But yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. All right. Well, you guys have a great one, and I will speak at
Thank
you
you.
some other time.
All right.
All right, man.
Thanks again.
Okay.
See you later.
All right, take care.
I'm out of here. See you guys.
Bye,
Bye.
Moss.
Okay, cheers, Moss.
All right, I'm gonna go kill the live stream again. Live streamers, if you are still there, I don't know, what you're doing over there. then thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. I mean, it's a small group, but you folks are awesome.
Okay.